fight is for. Persuasive propaganda conforms thoughts to a line, but that's with anything. What makes this different from the norm? They're changing everything. Sex, race, age, and species. Many think it's too late to stop now. It's how it needs to be. Like you don't need these guns and free speech. They lost trillions of dollars, wanna see all your receipts. Your privacy's in danger. Swarms of hive minds forming echo chambers. Pre-practice views skewed through repeated talking points leads me to conclude that they don't practice what they preach. You'll see, none of it's what it seems to be. Welcome to the high wars. The truth, what we strive towards. It's worth it to fight for. What the power fears most is when more minds don't conform to their lies. Don't let them lead you blind. Sight is what the eyes are for. Focus on discernment, then hindsight is my advice. In these eye wars with John strives. Your disillusion, there's no choice, you're not choosing. It's the illusion of choice that's causing the confusion. Good cop or bad cop, there is no refusing. We the people, the ones that fight the evil. Both foreign and domestic, no reclusion. They're already here, there is no recusing of the truth when it's colorblind. More about a state of mind. Cause sometimes people get corrupted, become disgusted to what they once trusted, led lost by others who tried to find what you couldn't and then lied. Said they figured it out just to sell a product line. They've been around forever but can never solve the crime. They're lying and now's the time to let the light shine. In case you couldn't see the signs. Welcome to the high wars. The truth, what we strive towards. It's worth it to fight for. What the power fears most is when more minds don't conform to their lies. Don't let them lead you blind. Sight is what the eyes are for. Focus on discernment, then hindsight is my advice. In these eye wars with John strive. Wars. John Strives did this.
Hello and good evening. On this Friday, my first live stream. Gonna try to get used to this. Just mindlessly talking. Got a couple topics I want to talk about tonight. People are more than welcome to come up. Hopefully, let me check the YouTube and make sure this is all ready to go. Let me see, where's the StreamYard link? Anyway, let's warm it up. Let me see if I can find this video. Share screen. Change Cuba live stream. Let's start it off with this.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it.
You want to hear that?
developments in the U.S. relationship with Cuba. Sources tell CBS News the U.S. is moving to file criminal charges against former President Raul Castro over a deadly clash 30 years ago. This follows an extraordinary visit to Cuba on Thursday by CIA Director John Ratcliffe and new protests by Cubans over power cuts and fuel shortages. Nicole Skanga is following all this for us. Nicole, good morning.
Vlad, good morning. President Trump has pressed for major reforms in Cuba, even floating a, quote, friendly takeover. But a potential U.S. indictment of former Cuban leader Raul Castro would mark a serious escalation with rippling implications for Havana, U.S. allies, and global adversaries.
3 decades after 2 civilian planes were shot down by Cuba, the Justice Department is taking steps to indict former Cuban President Raul Castro in connection to the deadly incident, according to U.S. officials familiar with the matter. The planes, operated by a Miami-based humanitarian group, were struck down by Cuban fighter jets over international waters back in 1996. 3 Americans and a U.S. resident were killed. Cuban officials have argued the shootdown was legitimate, claiming the planes violated its airspace. At 94, Raul Castro is widely considered the most powerful person in Cuba, even though he stepped down as the leader of its Communist Party in 2021. CIA Director John Ratcliffe met with his grandson, who's viewed as his representative, yesterday. He shared Trump's message that the U.S. is, quote, prepared to seriously engage on economic and security issues, but only if Cuba makes fundamental changes.
Cuba is not doing well. It's a failed nation.
A potential indictment comes as the U.S. increases pressure on Havana. The Trump administration has threatened heavy tariffs on any country that exports oil to Cuba, leading to energy shortages as oil shipments are largely cut off. Rare protests have erupted across Cuba as frustration over fuel shortages and power blackouts grows.
The Trump administration sees this as the best opportunity to effectuate regime change.
Mark Caputo is a CBS News contributor.
The problem that all of us have is understanding how power really works in Cuba, who's really calling the shots. And so it's difficult to understand the degree to which an indictment of Raul Castro would change the way in which the United States sort of interfaces with whomever they're talking to in Cuba.
While the indictment could be used as a pressure point in ongoing negotiations with Cuba, it could also make Cuban officials less willing to engage. The potential indictment would need to be approved by a grand jury first. A Justice Department spokesperson declined to comment. Matt?
All right, Nicole, thank you very much.
President Trump saying tonight that he expects a response very soon to the administration's latest peace proposal. And new images tonight of a suspected oil spill near Iran's main oil hub, why it's raising new concerns. ABC's Tom Sufi-Burridge in Tel Aviv.
Tonight, new images of what appears to be an oil slick stretching for miles in the Sea of Harg Island, home to Iran's main oil terminal, through which 90% of its oil exports normally pass. The source of the oil is unclear, but it's believed to be several thousand barrels. Iran denying reports of a spill, a spokesman telling state-run media the sheen is the result of a discharge from a tanker. This as the US still waits for Iran's response to a proposed interim agreement. Tonight, President Trump, who attended a golf tournament today, telling a French reporter he expects to hear from Iran, quote, very soon. The president reportedly telling French TV the Iranians still very much want to conclude a deal. The ceasefire hanging in the balance as the 2 trade attacks in the Strait. Just this week, the US military striking and disabling 3 Iranian-linked oil tankers, reinforcing the blockade on Iranian ports, which has halted Iran's exports and put pressure on the country's ability to store oil. If a deal is made, the US would gradually ease its military blockade in exchange for Iran allowing safe passage for the 1,500 commercial vessels trapped in the waters west of the Strait of Hormuz. And on land, despite the ceasefire in Lebanon, Israel launching fresh strikes against Iranian proxy Hezbollah in the south. More than 2,700 killed there in this war. Israeli and Lebanese officials set to hold peace talks in Washington next week.
And we're Secretary of State Marco Rubio and White House envoy Steve Witkoff today meeting with Qatar's Prime Minister in Miami, according to Axios. The Qataris key mediators in those negotiations between Iran and the US.
Why is everyone using ninja transfers?
war, but tonight President Trump calling it totally unacceptable. All of it is raising major questions of when and how this conflict will end. Here's ABC's Tom Soupy Burge in Tel Aviv tonight.
Tonight, with the straight.
Something is collapsing right now inside one of the most secretive and powerful regimes on earth. And what is happening is not just another protest. It is not another round of tear gas and angry crowds that disappear after a few days. What is happening inside Iran right now is something that the Islamic Republic has never faced in its entire 47-year history. The very organization that was built to protect the supreme leader is now turning against him. Let that sink in for a second. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the most feared military force in the Middle East, the organization that has crushed every protest, silenced every critic, and executed thousands of people who dared to speak against the regime. That same organization is now publicly questioning the man at the very top. And the streets of Iran are on fire. Not metaphorically, literally. Cities across the country are burning. Protesters are dying. Security forces are shooting into crowds. And behind closed doors in places where the world cannot see, a power struggle is underway that could determine not just the future of Iran, but the future of the entire Middle East. But here's the part that nobody is talking about. The situation inside Iran right now is far more dangerous, far more unstable, and far more consequential than anything the outside world is being told. And it all began with a number. The number was the exchange rate of the Iranian rial. In December of 2025, the Iranian currency collapsed to its lowest point in history. The rial, which had already been battered for years by international sanctions, simply fell apart. Overnight, prices for basic goods skyrocketed. Bread became expensive. Cooking oil disappeared from shelves. Families who had been scraping by suddenly found that their savings were worth almost nothing. This was not just an economic problem. This was a humiliation. Iran is a country sitting on some of the largest oil and gas reserves on the planet. It has a young, educated population of over 90 million people. It has ancient cities, rich culture, and centuries of history. And yet its citizens could not afford to buy eggs. For years, Iranians had been told to endure. The sanctions were America's fault. The hardships were Israel's fault. The sacrifices were necessary for the Islamic Revolution to survive. But by late December 2025, a critical mass of people had simply stopped believing that story. On December 28, 2025, the Bazaar of Tehran went silent. Shop owners pulled down their shutters. Traders refused to open. Market workers who had once been the backbone of the 1979 revolution that brought the Islamic Republic to power were now the first to shut it down. The Grand Bazaar of Tehran, one of the oldest and largest markets in the world, went on strike. And then the streets filled with people. Within hours, protests had spread to Isfahan, then Shiraz, then Mashhad, then Hamadan, then Qom, the holiest city in Iran, a city of mosques and religious seminaries, a city that had always been considered loyal to the clerical regime. Even Qom was rising. By December 31st, protests had reached more than 200 cities across Iran. In the city of Kudasht, a 21-year-old man named Amir Hissam Kodayarifard joined a crowd of peaceful protesters marching toward the city square. They were chanting, they were carrying nothing. And then a plainclothes security agent raised a weapon and shot him in the head. He died that night. His father confirmed to reporters that his son was not a militant. He was not a foreign agent. He was not a rioter. He was a young Iranian man who was angry about the price of bread. And what happened at his funeral would set off a chain of events that no one inside the regime was prepared for. When mourners gathered to bury Amir Hissam Kodayarifard, security forces arrived to control the crowd. What happened next changed everything. The mourners chased them away, not with weapons, not with military force, with stones in their bare hands and the raw, uncontrollable fury of people who had nothing left to lose. They chanted, "Death to Khamenei," as they buried a young man killed by Khamenei's forces. This scene repeated itself across Iran. Funerals became protests. Protests became uprisings. And uprisings began to spread to places that had never seen unrest before. But most people don't realize what was happening simultaneously in another part of Tehran. Inside government offices, inside military command centers, inside the sealed corridors of power, something unprecedented was quietly building. Senior officials were watching the same footage that protesters were uploading online. They were watching the same videos of crowds chanting for the downfall of the Islamic Republic. And a growing number of them were beginning to ask a question that had never been asked openly before. Is the supreme leader the problem? By the first days of January 2026, the protests had grown into the largest uprising Iran had seen since the 1979 revolution that created the Islamic Republic. Intelligence analysts, veteran Iran watchers, and international journalists were all saying the same thing. This was bigger than the Green Movement of 2009. This was bigger than the nationwide protests of 2019. This was bigger than the Masa Amini protests of 2022. This was something new, something the regime had not planned for. And then Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei made a decision that would push everything over the edge. On January 3rd, 2026, security forces killed at least 11 protesters in a single day. That same day, Khamenei appeared before cameras, and what he said left the watching world stunned. He said that rioters should be put in their place, not mourned, not understood, not negotiated with, put in their place. On the same day, the IRGC's provincial commander in Loristan province declared that the period of tolerance was over. His forces would target, and these are his exact words, rioters, organizers, and leaders of anti-security movements without leniency. 2 days later, the head of Iran's judiciary ordered prosecutors to show no leniency to protesters and to rush their trials. What happened next was something that would be described weeks later as the largest massacre in modern Iranian history. On the nights of January 8th and 9th, 2026, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps moved into the streets of Iran and organized, coordinated, deliberate military operations against their own people. They came with Kalashnikov rifles. They came with handguns. They came with heavy DSHK machine guns, the kind designed for use in battlefield warfare. They came with snipers positioned on elevated locations that, according to a former Ministry of Interior official, had been marked and identified for exactly this purpose years in advance. Since 2022, the regime had been quietly preparing for this moment. The orders, according to multiple sources with direct access to Iran's Supreme National Security Council and the presidential office, came from the very top, Ali Khamenei himself. The orders given to security forces were, according to the New York Times, to shoot, to kill, and to show no mercy. By January 13th, investigators from Iran International, working through a multi-stage investigation using government sources, eyewitness accounts, field reports, hospital data, and testimony from Iranian doctors and nurses, reached a conclusion that shocked the world. At least 12,000 civilians had been killed in the crackdown. 12,000 in 2 days. A Tehran doctor told journalists that security forces were shooting to kill. A surviving protester described watching people fall in the streets around her. Human rights organizations verified video footage of bodies in hospital corridors, families searching through piles of the dead. And yet, even as this was happening, even as the massacre was underway, something was shifting inside the most powerful institution in Iran. The IRGC was created for one purpose: to protect the Islamic Revolution, to serve as the supreme leader's most loyal and most lethal instrument of power. Since 1979, it had grown from a small paramilitary force into a massive organization with hundreds of thousands of fighters, control over Iran's ballistic missile arsenal, dominance over large parts of the Iranian economy, and deep roots inside every branch of government. It was, in every practical sense, the backbone of the Islamic Republic. And now, for the first time in 47 years, cracks were appearing inside it. Reports began to emerge from inside the IRGC that senior commanders were deeply uncomfortable with what they were being ordered to do, not because they were suddenly committed to democracy or human rights, but because they understood something that Khamenei, insulated in his compound, seemed not to grasp, not in a battle, not in a single confrontation, but in the longer, slower, more existential war for legitimacy. The more the IRGC fired on protesters, the more the protests spread. The more bodies that appeared in the streets, the more Iranians who had stayed home decided to join. The killings were not stopping the uprising, they were fueling it. And there was something else, something far more dangerous for the IRGC's own interests. The international response was unprecedented. The European Union, which had long been cautious about confronting Tehran, moved to officially designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. The United States Treasury announced it had tracked senior Iranian officials transferring their personal wealth out of the country, a signal that even the regime's inner circle was preparing for the possibility that the government might fall. The U.S. Treasury Secretary stated publicly that some Iranian officials appeared to be preparing to flee. Within Iran, a Ministry of Interior official sent an anonymous audio message to media outlets saying he had defected, that he had witnessed security forces firing on protesters, and that he had stayed home from work in solidarity with the uprising. IRGC commanders were watching all of this and doing the math. If the regime fell in chaos, they would lose everything: their businesses, their properties, their power. Some of them, the ones most responsible for massacres, would face justice. The exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi had already promised fair trials for those who stepped down peacefully. But for those who continued to fire on civilians, no such promise was made. And then came the moment that nobody predicted. Senior commanders inside the IRGC began, quietly and carefully, to signal that they believed Ali Khamenei needed to step aside. This was not a public announcement. In Iran, you do not make public announcements that challenge the supreme leader and then go home for dinner. People who say the wrong thing in Iran disappear. They face execution. Their families face punishment. But the signals were there for those who knew how to read them. Military officials who had always publicly praised Khamenei began to conspicuously avoid doing so. Statements that should have come from senior commanders expressing loyalty did not come. Meetings that should have taken place were delayed or canceled. And in the background, according to reporting from multiple international outlets, discussions were taking place at the highest levels of the IRGC about a transition of power. The question being asked was no longer whether Khamenei could survive this crisis. The question was what comes after him and how the IRGC could manage that transition in a way that preserved their own power and prevented the kind of revolutionary collapse that would drag them all down with it. This is where things take a serious turn, because the IRGC has two options, and both of them are terrifying for the people of Iran. The first option is to continue backing Khamenei, continue the massacres, continue the crackdown, and hope that brute force eventually extinguishes the uprising the way it did in 2019 when security forces killed at least 100 people in just a few days, and the country went silent. That strategy worked once. But in 2025 and 2026, the conditions are dramatically different. The economy is in far worse shape. The protests are far larger. The international pressure is far greater. And critically, the IRGC itself is more fractured than it was in 2019. The second option is to allow a controlled transition, to push Khamenei aside, install a successor from within the existing power structure, and present this to both the Iranian public and the international community as a kind of reform, a fresh start, a new chapter. But here's the problem with that plan. The protesters are not asking for a new supreme leader. They're asking for no supreme leader. The chants in the streets of Iran in January 2026 were not chants asking for better governance or economic reform. They were chants calling for the complete and total overthrow of the Islamic Republic. In Isfahan, crowds chanted, "Don't be afraid, we are all together." In Tehran, retirees marched and chanted, "Our enemy is right here, they lie and say it's America." In Deloran, in Baghmalik, in cities across the country, protesters shouted for Reza Pahlavi. They shouted, "Jabed Shah, long live the Shah," the phrase of the monarchy that the Islamic Revolution had destroyed in 1979. They were not just angry, they were reaching back across 47 years of history to reclaim something they felt had been stolen from them. The movement was led, this time, not just by young women, though they were there. Young men played a larger role than in any previous uprising. Retirees marched in the streets, oil workers in the Persian Gulf joined strikes, telecommunications workers held coordinated demonstrations in 7 cities simultaneously. Market traders who had been the engine of the 1979 revolution were now using their economic power to try to end it. This was not a protest, it was a revolution. And Khamenei responded to it the only way he knew how. On January 17th, 2026, the supreme leader appeared publicly and stated that thousands of people had been killed. His framing was extraordinary. He attributed responsibility for the deaths to the United States and Israel. He called the protesters harmful individuals for the country. He posted on social media, "We will not surrender to the enemy," a statement that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, publicly mocked on the same platform. And then, 1 week later, Khamenei disappeared. On January 24th, 2026, Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the man who had ruled with absolute authority for 35 years, went into hiding in an underground bunker. The leader of Iran was hiding from his own people. Within hours, Iranians on social media gave him a new nickname. They called him Mush Ali, Rat Ali. And outside the bunker, the streets were still burning. What most people don't realize is that the story of what happened next is not just a story about Iran. It is a story about the entire architecture of power in the Middle East. Because for decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran had been the central pillar of a network of influence that stretched from Tehran to Baghdad to Beirut to Gaza and beyond. The IRGC's Quds Force had built and funded Hezbollah in Lebanon. It had supported Hamas in Gaza. It had armed and trained Houthi forces in Yemen. It had embedded itself so deeply into the political structures of Iraq that it effectively functioned as a shadow government. All of that was now at risk. Because if the Islamic Republic fell, or even if it was seriously weakened, the entire network of proxy forces and allied militias that Iran had built over 4 decades would be without their primary sponsor, their weapon supplier, and their strategic coordinator, and the region knew it. Israel, which had fought a brutal 12-day war against Iran just months earlier in June 2025, a conflict in which Israeli forces targeted IRGC headquarters, missile sites, and nuclear facilities, was watching the protests with intense interest. The Israeli Defense Forces had already received messages from Iranians, including some identifying themselves as members of Iranian security institutions, expressing opposition to the government. The United States, under President Trump, was watching too. The exiled Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, had directly appealed to Trump to support the protesters, and Trump had made statements sympathetic to the uprising. The U.S. Treasury was tracking the movement of Iranian officials' money. Russia and China, longtime backers of the Iranian government, were pushing for calm. Moscow and Beijing understood that a collapsed Iran would be a vacuum, and vacuums in the Middle East are never filled cleanly. The entire world was holding its breath. Inside Iran, the crackdown continued, but it was changing in a way that revealed the regime's desperation. In March 2026, the IRGC issued a stark public warning. If protests restarted, the crackdown would be bigger than the one in January, but this warning was different from previous ones. Previous warnings had been issued from a position of strength, the voice of a state that was firmly in control and confident in its power. This warning had a different quality. It sounded like a threat issued by an institution that was afraid. And fear, in authoritarian regimes, does something dangerous. It makes them unpredictable. Security forces began shooting people at checkpoints. In July, 2 young men named Mehdi Abaye and Alireza Karbasi were killed near Hamadan while on a hiking trip. They were not protesters. They were simply in the wrong place when IRGC forces encountered them. Their deaths were reported by official media with no explanation. In July, Basiji militia forces shot and killed a family driving past a checkpoint. The family included a baby girl named Raha, a baby. The exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi wrote that these killings showed the regime was taking revenge for its humiliation by murdering children. That sentence was not political rhetoric. It was an accurate description of what was happening. The regime that had promised to protect the Islamic Revolution was now shooting babies at checkpoints. But what happened next changed everything in a way that almost no one predicted. Inside the highest levels of the Iranian government, a fracture appeared that the regime could no longer hide. An IRB television channel director was fired after a reporter appeared to say, "Death to Khamenei," live on state television during the Iranian Revolution anniversary rally. On state television, Iran's most tightly controlled media institution had allowed an act of open defiance to go out on air before anyone could stop it. The live broadcast of President Pezeshkian was cut mid-speech by the same network. The information architecture of the Islamic Republic was breaking down from the inside. A former IRGC detainee, identified only as Kazem to protect his identity, gave testimony to journalists about what the nights of January 8th and 9th had looked like from inside the IRGC's operations. On the afternoon of January 7th, he had been ordered to report to the IRGC Vali-e Asr garrison at 10 in the morning on January 8th. At the morning meeting, 50 to 60 men were given authorizations to use Kalashnikov rifles, handguns, and ammunition. They were told what to do. They were told who to shoot. This testimony was not the story of soldiers following legal orders in a war. This was the story of a regime dispatching armed men to kill civilians in their own streets on the personal orders of a supreme leader hiding in a bunker. And more people inside the system were willing to say so. The Ministry of Interior official who had defected, the IREB reporter who had spoken on air, the IRGC members who were quietly communicating with Israeli and American officials, the growing number of commanders who were signaling that Khamenei had to go. The dam was cracking. The question that everyone watching this situation was asking was not whether the Islamic Republic was in crisis. That was obvious. The question was whether it could survive. And the answer depends on something that no outside analyst can fully know. It depends on what the IRGC ultimately decides. Here is the brutal reality of power in Iran. The IRGC is not just a military organization. It is a state within a state. It controls vast economic interests. It owns companies, construction firms, import businesses, and financial networks that make it one of the most powerful economic actors in Iran. Its senior commanders have accumulated enormous personal wealth. They have as much to lose from chaos as Khamenei does, but they also have more options than Khamenei. A supreme leader who has ordered the massacre of 12,000 of his own people has very few good options. He cannot negotiate his way out. He cannot reform his way out. He cannot simply announce that things will be different now and expect anyone to believe him. His only tools are the tools he has already used: violence, intimidation, imprisonment, and execution. The IRGC, on the other hand, has a choice. It can present itself as the institution that removed a leader who had gone too far, that stepped in to prevent Iran from descending, into complete chaos, that opened a door, however narrow, to some kind of transition. That version of events would not satisfy the protesters, who want the entire Islamic Republic dismantled, but it might be enough to stop the bleeding, to create a pause, to buy time. This is exactly the kind of calculation that military institutions make when they decide to remove the civilian leader they were supposed to serve. And the history of the Middle East is full of exactly this kind of transition. The man who had been positioned for years as Khamenei's successor is Mojtaba Khamenei, the supreme leader's own son. After Ali Khamenei's eventual removal from power, the government announced Mojtaba as the new supreme leader. The response from the streets was immediate. Protesters chanted, "Death to Mojtaba," in residential neighborhoods across Iran. In neighborhoods where raising your voice against the regime meant risking your life, people opened their windows and chanted from their rooftops, an act that had become a form of resistance and solidarity. The regime had tried to hand power from father to son, as if the Islamic Republic were a monarchy, as if the revolution of 1979 had replaced a king only to create another dynasty. And the people of Iran, who had been chanting death to the dictator for months, saw exactly what was happening. The opposition figure, Reza Pahlavi, urged Iranians to remain in their homes while continuing rooftop chants as a sign of unity, a tactic that was both safe and profoundly symbolic. You could not shoot everyone who chanted from a rooftop. You could not arrest every window in every apartment building in every city in Iran. The regime had run out of walls to put people against, and internationally, the pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. Sanctions were tightening. The European Union had listed the IRGC as a terrorist organization. The United States was publicly tracking the movement of Iranian officials' personal wealth. Australia was sanctioning specific IRGC commanders by name. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Shirin Ebadi was calling for international action against IRGC leadership. The world, which had watched previous Iranian uprisings with sympathy and done very little, was this time being forced into a corner. The scale of the killings was too large to ignore. 12,000 civilians, many of them children, shot in the streets by their own government on the direct orders of their supreme leader. This was not a statistic. This was a historical crime. And yet, in the middle of all of this, a darker possibility lurked beneath the surface. What if the IRGC does not allow a transition? What if the commanders who privately question Khamenei's judgment decide that the risk of change is greater than the risk of staying the course? What if they look at the chaos of post-Gaddafi Libya, or the collapse of the Soviet Union, or the fragmentation of Syria, and decide that any transition, however badly needed, is too dangerous to risk? The IRGC's new deputy commander, Ahmad Vahidi, is a man with a very specific history. He was one of the figures named by Argentine prosecutors in connection with the 1994 bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires that killed 85 people. He has an active Interpol red notice. He was specifically appointed because of his loyalty to Khamenei and his willingness to use harsher methods. His appointment, at the exact moment when the IRGC needed to soften its image to survive, was either a sign that Khamenei still had enough control to insist on loyalty over pragmatism, or it was a move by hardliners inside the IRGC to prevent the kind of internal reform that might lead to accountability for the massacres. Either way, it was not a sign that the regime was preparing to open its fists, and the protesters knew it. This is where things stand right now. The people in the streets of Iran are not backing down. They are not dispersing. They have watched thousands of their fellow citizens die. They have buried sons and daughters and neighbors and strangers. They have watched their currency become worthless, their savings evaporate, their leaders hide in bunkers. They have, in the deepest possible sense, nothing left to lose. And that is the most dangerous kind of person that any government can face. There's a phrase that appears in every serious analysis of revolutionary moments, a phrase that historians use to describe the point at which a regime's collapse becomes inevitable, not because the government is overthrown from outside, but because it loses the will to maintain itself from within. And what is happening inside Iran right now is precisely that. The television journalist who said "Death to Khamenei" on live state television, the Ministry of Interior official who defected and stayed home from work, the IRGC commanders who are quietly signaling that the leader must go, the soldiers who were ordered to shoot and who are now giving testimony about what they did, the government officials who are moving their money out of the country. These are not isolated acts of individual courage. These are symptoms of an institution that is starting to believe that the regime it serves will not survive, and that survival requires choosing a different side before it is too late. The Islamic Republic of Iran has survived for 47 years by convincing enough of its own people that the alternative to obedience was worse than obedience itself. It has survived sanctions, wars, assassinations, and uprisings. It has survived because the IRGC always, at the decisive moment, chose to defend it. What is different now, what makes this moment unlike any that has come before, is that the IRGC is no longer sure that defending the regime is the same thing as defending itself. And when an institution that powerful starts asking that question, the answer, when it comes, tends to come very fast. The final piece of the story has not yet been written. As of right now, Iran remains in a state of violent, unresolved crisis. The protests have continued in waves. The crackdowns have continued. People are still dying. The economy is still in freefall. The supreme leader, whoever holds that title now, commands a security apparatus that is visibly fracturing. The world is watching, as it has watched before, with a mixture of sympathy, caution, and calculated self-interest. The United States is watching and calculating what it wants from an Iran in transition. Israel is watching and wondering whether a weakened Iran means a safer Middle East or a more chaotic one. Russia and China are watching and trying to ensure that if Iran changes, it changes in a direction they can work with. And 90 million Iranians are watching each other, deciding in real time how much risk they are willing to bear, whether to go back into the streets, whether to stay home, whether to believe that this time things might actually be different. History does not move in straight lines. Revolutions fail. Regimes that seem on the edge of collapse sometimes find a way to survive. The Islamic Republic has surprised the world before, but something has broken inside Iran that cannot easily be repaired. When a government kills 12,000 of its own citizens in 2 days and then calls them the enemy, it loses something that no amount of force can restore. It loses the story it tells itself about why it exists. It loses the claim that it is anything other than a group of people with guns holding onto power for its own sake. And the people of Iran, who have 47 years of practice at surviving exactly that, have decided that they are no longer willing to accept it. Whether this moment becomes a revolution, or a massacre, or a managed transition, or something that the world does not yet have a name for, is not yet known. But one thing is certain. The final piece of the story has not yet been written. The only question left is what comes next. And that question is being answered right now in the streets of Tehran and Isfahan and Kudasht and Qom by the people who have decided that the answer is worth dying for.
The United Arab Emirates has been secretly bombing Iran since April. We only found out this week. According to the Wall Street Journal, the UAE carried out military strikes on Iranian targets, including a refinery on Iran's Lavan Island in the Persian Gulf, that it never publicly acknowledged. That strike caused a major fire and knocked the facility offline for months. Iran described it at the time as an enemy attack and responded with barrages of missiles and drones at UAE territory. Iran has now launched more than 2,800 missiles and drones at the UAE during this conflict. That is more than at any other country. Schools in the Emirates shifted to remote learning last week. Tourism dropped. Real estate stalled. Layoffs started. And then on May 6th, the UAE and Israel coordinated a joint strike on Iran's biggest petrochemical facility in Asaluya. It was not publicly announced. Bloomberg reported it. The ceasefire, if that's still the right word, is described by Trump himself as on life support. U.S. forces fired on and disabled 2 Iranian oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz last Friday after exchanging fire overnight. An oil slick roughly 71 square kilometers in size was spotted near Iran's main crude export terminal at Karg Island. Iran has created something it's calling the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, a government body to formally claim control over international shipping lanes. Secretary of State Rubio said, "Is the world going to accept that Iran now controls an international waterway?" That question has no good answer right now. Trump warned Iran it would be decimated and finished off if it refuses a deal. Iran is demanding sovereignty guarantees before returning to negotiations. Those two positions don't meet. The war started in late February. It has cost the U.S. $29 billion. There is no exit date. There is no signed agreement. The Strait of Hormuz moves about 20% of the world's oil. It is not fully open. What happens in Beijing this week between Trump and Xi may matter more to this conflict than anything happening in Tehran right now.
Well, there's a lot of news going on, and one half of the country still just won't give this dude his credit. In a matter of 2 years, he has completely changed the geopolitics of the planet. My entire life, I've been told Iran is the boogeyman, Cuba is a problem, Venezuela is a problem, and within about a year, he's kind of resolved all three. So we're still going with Iran, but if there's any way you think Iran is getting out of this, you have lost your mind. Even if we left today, Iran is done. They will collapse. They are in the middle of a civil war that causing natural catastrophes off the coast of Karg Island, just dumping oil because they can't shut their oil refineries off. So they're just dumping oil, and nobody has anything. Where's Greta? Where's Hassan? Where are all these leftists? they're just yelling about Trump. They don't care about anything else but virtue signaling. None of this matters to them. It's just crazy to see. Iran has literally attacked half of their neighbors, and it's not going to go anywhere. The only difference, the only difference between Iran and Venezuela is Iran has way more people. They were way more ready for a war. But still, like they couldn't do anything with us. It took like a matter of weeks, and we neutered them. Let's go to this one right here. It's one of my favorite channels to watch, RJ Talks. Let's see what he was saying. Always has great information, quick with it. Puts out about 2 videos a day.
May 15th. Welcome to the show. The island nation of Cuba is about to be liberated. Yes, protests erupting across the island as the Cuban government announces they've completely run out of fuel. Diesel and all other fuel products gone. In fact, the rolling blackouts that Cubans have been dealing with for the last 6 months, that's over. There is zero electricity on the island. It's been over 60 hours with zero electricity. Russia not touching it, signaling they are done. But something even more interesting just happened yesterday. CIA Director John Radcliffe touching down in Havana yesterday. One guess why you think the top U.S. spy chief would go to Cuba. We'll show you.
CIA Director John Radcliffe heading down to the island with a message to tell the Cuban government to stop being what a senior CIA official called a national security threat. Radcliffe telling the Cubans they need to stop allowing adversaries like China and Russia unfettered access to the island. The Cubans, for their part, acknowledging publicly the meeting took place and saying they told the CIA they pose no such threat. The meeting comes as a U.S. oil embargo continues to put near unprecedented strain on the island, choking off its fuel supply. Blackouts, which have long been a problem on the island, are now worse than ever. Just yesterday, half the island's power grid failing. You see those protests there. They are unusual.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, communism and socialism about to be purged once and for all from the Western Hemisphere. These socialist countries who've existed for over half a century now dropping like flies. Venezuela, now Cuba, then Nicaragua and Bolivia. It's like a domino game, folks. One after the next. Venezuela kicked this all off. That country, Venezuela, now openly pro-American, pro-capitalist, a foreign policy breakthrough. That's what that was. Something U.S. corporate media may be upset about, but Venezuelans are not. Watch CNN's Aaron Burnett yesterday try and fail repeatedly to get Maria Corina Machado to trash President Trump and Venezuela's new close ties with the United States. Check this out.
But Trump keeps talking about Venezuela as the 51st state. I just mentioned that social media post that he posted with the 51st state and the map of Venezuela. He also talked about this in detail earlier this week to a Fox News reporter who was really a bit taken aback by it. How do you even respond to that?
Well, I know President Trump really likes Venezuela, and for good reasons. It is a beautiful country, but most of all, of wonderful people. But I'm sure he's going to love it even better when we have a country that is free, prosperous, and democratic, and turns into the strongest ally in the Americas, because we're located in the heart of the Americas. And look, Aaron, from every perspective, for the American people and for the Venezuelan people, a transition to democracy is a win-win solution.
But when
Oh, she hated that answer. Did you see her scolding face? Oh, I love it. Aaron Burnett's a former bank executive. I think she's married to a Goldman Sachs executive. So she's all, she has her side to pick. She doesn't really care either way. She just doesn't want to see Donald Trump succeed, or the country for that matter.
When Trump said to the Fox News reporter, quote, "I'm very serious about this, so you can talk about this. I'm serious about beginning a process to make Venezuela the 51st state." You do not take him seriously.
Well, I think he's sending a message to many people and decides, and certainly to the regime.
I think we got to round it off first before we do that. It would have to be, we'd have to have 5 to jump into it. Maybe we get Puerto Rico in there, Quebec, Greenland, Venezuela. Then I'm thinking, what's the next one? I don't know. There's a couple choices.
I mean, we, the Venezuelan people,
maybe we'll break California into 2.
Value, appreciate, share the values of the American people. We are decisive to be a strong ally, and I think it is in terms of legacy. Imagine what this will mean for the U.S. government and for your country, Aaron. For the first time, we will have, once we move towards democracy and Venezuela is free, Cuba will follow, Nicaragua will follow. We will have for the first time the history of this continent, the Americans free of communism and dictatorship. This is huge.
All right, Maria Corina Machado, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, next is Cuba, the largest island in the Caribbean, about to be liberated. That's what's about to happen after 5 straight months of the U.S. strengthening its oil embargo. Now, some people seem to confuse what Trump's doing in Cuba to what's happening in Iran with the naval blockade. Even U.S. congressmen and women, I'm hearing, claim the U.S. has an oil blockade around Cuba. That's not accurate. There is no U.S. military blockade around the island. In fact, it's the same exact policy that we've had in place.
Yeah, we just cut off their number one oil supplier, Venezuela, and Venezuela agreed not to give them any more oil, and now Cuba's getting choked out.
Since the 60s. The only change Trump's made was 5 months ago. He signed Executive Order 14380, which imposes tariffs on top of sanctions to any country selling oil to Cuba. There's no military blockade. That's why Russia last month was able to send an oil tanker to Cuba without issue. But they've given up. The Russians signaling they're out. No more free handouts to Cuba. Democrats very upset by this. In fact, some Democrats like Rashida Tlaib seem to be working to help Cuba and Russia. You can't believe this.
These 100% grass-fed beef sticks from Paleo Valley are 30 sticks for just $36.
The people of Cuba are starving because of our country.
People of Cuba are starving because they have poor leadership who doesn't give a damn about their people. That's why their women turn to prostitution. They don't even go for money. They go for dewormers. They sleep with foreign men for deworming medications like ivermectin. It's been known for decades. It's a really poor country, and it shouldn't be. They're great people. They're very ingenuitive. They're still driving in the same cars from the 50s, and they keep them going. So it's about time. It's about time for a lot of these regimes to fall. They were propped up boogeymen for our military-industrial complex, keep their budget up high. But now we're resolving problems. So even though the military budget has been increased by $500 billion, it could slowly go back down after a while. But, first we have to clear the board.
They are cutting them off from the rest of the world through sanctions and total blockade of fuel. A country of 11 million people without fuel. Think about that. Homes, schools, hospitals without power, children without food or medicine. The forced starvation of entire, Cuban people. This is pure cruelty. And we all say it together. Let Cuba live.
So what then has changed exactly? How has the U.S. under Donald Trump managed to finally, after 60 plus years, been able to break and bankrupt the Cuban Communist Party, the Cuban regime? Democrat and Republican presidents alike, they have been trying and failing to overthrow this regime for decades. How has Trump managed to do it in 5 months? One word: Venezuela. Nobody gives the president enough credit on foreign policy. Realize the U.S. has been trying to do this, folks, to Cuba for over 60 years. In 1961, CIA attempted to overthrow Fidel Castro with the Bay of Pigs invasion. Then Kennedy tried again with Operation Mongoose, multiple assassination attempts. We've all heard and read about this stuff, the poison pills, the exploding cigars. In 2014, President Obama, he reportedly got so fed up with U.S.-Cuba policy, he threw up his hands and said, fine, enough. It's impossible, virtually impossible to do this. Let's try our Iran model with Cuba. Let's be nice to them. So he lifted the U.S. embargo, hoping that would bring about political change on the island.
And it failed miserably, just like it would have failed in Iran. You can't give in to what these countries want, these people want. The IRGC is not, they're a death cult. They've always been a death cult. And Cuba is just like they're the last. I mean, you can give them credit for this. Like, they're the last communist bastion from the Soviet era. I mean, you could say that about the Chinese, but I mean, we all know who's been propping up the Chinese has been us. We gave them our manufacturing.
Big surprise, it failed. It turns out all it took was flipping Venezuela. And now, today, the communist regime in Cuba about to be gone forever. The people completely fed up with communism and socialism. Nick Shirley recently traveled to Cuba. He was able to talk to regular Cubans on the ground, something you never see in mainstream media. Nick does a phenomenal job, by the way. Check some of this out.
What percentage of people do you think are suffering here in Cuba?
La mayoría. La mayoría.
Your thoughts on communism? ¿Qué piensas de comunismo?
De lo más malo que existió, lo voy a decir comunista. Porque realmente ninguno es comunista.
None of the gas stations are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas. Where are the people at? ¿Dónde está la gente? No hay nadie aquí en la calle, no hay nadie aquí en estas casas. ¿Dónde está la gente?
The problem is that there's no gasoline. That is to move. Anyway, we have a lot of limitation for work.
None of the gas stations are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas. When the United States captured Maduro, their main supplier of gas and oil was shut off. So the country right now has hardly any gas. And if you do want to get gas, you have to wait in a line from the government. The guy that we're in our taxi with right now, he said his position to get gas is $1,200 in line, and gas from the government costs around $1. But gas, if you were to buy it on the black market, costs $10 per liter. That's $40 per gallon.
And that was before the island completely ran out of fuel. Then yesterday, something incredible happened. CIA Director John Radcliffe traveling to Havana in this super rare high-level intel meeting in the midst of this fuel collapse, in the midst of the Cuban people protesting throughout the island. officially, the U.S. government saying he went there, Radcliffe went to Cuba to present an offer to the Cuban government on this $100 million aid package. But that doesn't make much sense, folks.
Some more international intrigue with some breaking news into us now. We're just learning the director of the CIA has met with Cuban officials in Havana today. Look at this. The CIA official tells us that John Ratcliffe was, in their words, in Havana to personally deliver President Trump's message that the U.S. is prepared to engage on economic and security issues, but only if Cuba makes fundamental changes. It comes as the New York Times is reporting that Cuba has run out of oil. Reserves are gone, right? As Cuba's been grappling with these major power outages, these blackouts. You see some of that here. Gas stations closed, traffic lights out, etc.
That would be the job of Marco Rubio or someone from the State Department. For CIA Director Radcliffe to go, it seems more likely like he was there to meet with his intel counterpart to discuss plans on regime transition or maybe a possible deal where the intel service agrees to hand over Raul Castro, because the Cubans, look, they have a very strong intel service on the island who is supposed to answer directly to their president, Miguel Diaz-Canel. All of them, though, everyone knows, still largely answers to the Castro family, especially Raul Castro, which is why what just happened this morning, stunning news that the U.S. Department of Justice may be about to indict Raul Castro. Yes, could we be about to see Nicolas Maduro 2.0 in Cuba?
While the president was overseas, NBC News learning his Justice Department is seeking to indict the former president of Cuba, 94-year-old Raul Castro. According to U.S. official familiar with the matter, the indictment is related to the 1996 incident where Cuba shot down 2 humanitarian planes from an organization known as Brothers to the Rescue. The Trump administration's effort to possibly charge Raul Castro, the brother of Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro, comes as the Trump administration has been ramping up pressure against Cuba's communist regime.
And we saw how easy it was to take Venezuela after Maduro was gone, to liberate Venezuela. Are we about to see the same thing in Cuba? Did John Radcliffe just secure a deal for the U.S. military to raid and arrest Raul Castro? We shall see. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you real soon.
There's RJ Talks. Great channel, great information, gives great stock tips, all different types of stuff. Very informative dude. It's really weird, trying to get used to this. Did I just switch to share? No, share this tab. There's a lot of stuff going to be happening this weekend. Probably the collapse of Cuba would be one of them. But the collapse of Cuba is going to be a big one. The rally in Britain the UK is going to be another one. God knows what's going to happen in Iran over the weekend. They're getting rattled. There's a bunch of people. There's civil war kicking off. Their military is kind of turning on each other. Their soldiers are down to like 1 potato a day, and they're not getting paid. So that ain't going to last long, especially when you're a regime running on fear. Once you don't have power anymore in your own country, there's nobody who's going to be scared of you anymore, especially since you've been neutered. You got no Navy. You got mosquito boats, but that's why we put the Warhogs and we got the Apache helicopters in there. Now we're using laser technology to shoot them down. So it's all changing real fast. Not fast enough for some people, because I hear you. Gas is expensive as hell. But gas was expensive as hell in 2023, and nobody really cared. Nobody said that we shouldn't have backed Ukraine, even though like that was running up oil prices. Everybody keeps calling Trump a warmonger and this, that, and the third. When Democrats and Republicans were both signing the bombs before we were shipping them over there, like it was a game. And war's not a game, but at the same time, like if you're looking for a problem, if you're trying to solve a problem like that, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to jump right in head on. People confuse what Donald Trump says a lot of times. They try to exaggerate. Oh, what did Trump say? No new wars. No, he said no new endless wars. And this is not an endless war. This war will be over fast, not as fast as Venezuela, which was literally overnight, but it'll get done. So here's another great channel that I watch, 2CTV. He has a lot of great updates. Let's see what's going on in the British Kingdom.
Hello and welcome to 2CTV. This is your global news channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and this weekend in central London, we are having a huge rally to not just unite the kingdom in Britain, but also unite the whole of the Western world. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer has now declared war on those attending this peaceful rally and celebrations. Of course, there is going to be the far left element as well, doing what they call a counter-protest. But of course, this march and this rally on its own is not necessarily a protest. So the left are not counter-protesting, they are protesting the march, which is obviously going to be having hundreds of thousands of not just British patriots, but also those who believe in life and freedom from Europe, the Americas, the Middle East, and across the whole world. Those who are coming all the way from Canada, from Israel, from Australia. Everybody's coming to London, and a number of people have already been banned by the Prime Minister. There has now been an order of crackdown. Over 4,000 police officers are now being deployed. We're going to go to Tommy Robinson, my good friend, who is organizing this rally, the United Kingdom movement. I'm going to be there tomorrow. Obviously, it's going to take place tomorrow on the 16th of May. And I will be making a speech, despite the threats coming from not just the political establishment, but also the political left. First, let's go to Keir Starmer, who is currently, obviously, fighting his own party because they're trying to drag him out of Downing Street and replace him with Andy Burnham. He is having a leadership crisis, so he needs a bit of distraction. He needs chaos and crisis. And he's going to be doing that this weekend. Starmer says that the United Kingdom march organisers are peddling hatred and division, which coming from the Prime Minister. And he says we've already blocked visas for the far-right agitators who want to come here to spread their extremist views. Let's go to the Prime Minister. Then we're going to go to Tommy Robinson's reaction. And we're going to get your reaction, obviously, live as usual. If you're a member of the channel, we will continue this conversation after the live on our chat forum. If you don't know how to do that, I'm going to explain at the end of the live stream. Let's go to Keir Starmer.
Tomorrow's march in London is a reminder of what we're up against in the battle of our values. The organisers, including convicted thugs and racists, are peddling hatred and division, plain and simple. Their goal is to convince people that Britain's problems are caused by those living alongside them. But that is not the Britain that I...
No, it's people like you, Kears. Look at, is this his living room? Look at behind him. Seem like a regular Joe just talking to you in his living room? I don't think so, but I think like he doesn't really care about the regular, the common man's neighborhood. He's willing to sell that out as long as he gets better tasting food and cheaper labor, just like they do in America. So all this is just nonsense. And I would tell everybody who's going to that rally, keep your head on a swivel, because you know somebody's itching for a false flag. Make sure if anybody got a balaclava on, you snatch that off their face and you record their face.
I know. This is a country built on decency, fairness, and respect. A country that is at its best when people from different backgrounds come together in common purpose. This is our country, with a majority who share those values, a majority who may not always be as loud, but must always define who we are. So my government will not stand in the way of peaceful protest, but we will act decisively against hatred. We will use the full force of the law when that hatred manifests as violence. And we will ban those coming into the UK who seek to stir it up, as we have done already. Wow. Because this country belongs to all of us. And I will not tolerate anyone who seeks to stand in the way of that.
Yeah, that's you, Keir Starmer. You are doing that. Now, the reaction we have from Tommy Robinson. You banned democratically elected officials and independent journalists from entering our country to cover an event that brings all walks of life together against the despised W banker like you. The people want to unite the kingdom. They don't want you. Now, despite the fact that there's already been a massive backlash politically against Keir Starmer because he says, well, all we want to do is just enforce the law. Yeah, fair enough. That's the job of the police, right? But the job of the politicians and the legislators is to change laws or introduce new laws. And that's exactly what Keir Starmer has done ever since he became Prime Minister. So the laws have changed. He's introduced more crackdown laws. He's getting almost as bad as the Islamic Republic of Iran. And he's now telling the, obviously, Starmer troopers, his police officers, to go and enforce the law, democratically implemented laws. Yeah, but the law is wrong because you are going after innocent people. Keir Starmer has just now had a meeting with Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, and the head of the Metropolitan Police, Mark Rowley, and his Metropolitan Police Department to essentially oversee tomorrow's march and rally. Let's go to the video we have from the...
I want to tell you a story.
I used to believe that...
Prime Minister, let's go.
That's the map the coalition will take, so that bottom map there. The blue route to the other side is the route that the United Kingdom will be following, and they'll be using public order conditions to keep them to that route, and they'll form up locations. And then NAPRA intend to rally at Waterloo Place, and United Kingdom will intend to rally.
Yo, what was that movie? V for Vendetta. Huh? Look at the background, dude. Definitely has that feel. Like they got all these cameras running. Like they're trying to initiate fear into the people because the Labour Party has just gotten their asses beat. And he's scared to lose power because he's not done pushing the narrative that they brought him in for.
Parliament Square. So we're going to have a fairly sizable sterile area between.
So over 4,000 officers have now been deployed, not just from London, but across the country, including Greater Manchester, who obviously has Andy Burnham as its mayor. They're all deploying their police forces and security officials all the way to the capital for a peaceful march and rally. Meanwhile, we have the far left and the Palestinian supporters continuing to do whatever they want to do every single day, every single week in London, and nobody cares in their political establishment. Now, the CPS, or the Crown Prosecution Service, which is basically the main prosecutor on behalf of the state, have also now posted this statement saying prosecutors have been issued new legal guidance on the use of offensive banners, slogans, chants, or symbols to recognize the changing context. An increase I love how they put increase twice for absolutely no reason. An increase in increase. Proofread, you weirdos, in hate crime attacks ahead of significant planned protests in London this weekend. Now, if you're watching from outside of the United Kingdom, in Britain, similar to Canada, obviously we don't have free speech. It's limited speech we have, it's controlled speech. But we also have so-called hate speech laws, which if you break it, you will go to jail now. It's not really just about, before we had non-crime hate incidents. So basically something could be offensive, but you can't really become a criminal because of that. But now that's changed. So when they say offensive slogans or signs, it doesn't have to be necessarily, for example, what you had in Germany in the 1930s against the Jews. No, it doesn't have to be that. It could simply be anything. At this point, flying the Union flag, the flag of the United Kingdom, is offensive to some people. And
that's amazing. In their own country, people deem that flag, their own country's flag, as a hate symbol. Like, that should tell you right there there's a problem.
The police can do a crackdown. If you have a sticker on you that says F Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, you could be arrested in the United Kingdom because you're offending Hamas. Many other examples like this. Now, they say that this is some sort of far-right march. Obviously, it's not. As we've seen many times before with the United Kingdom. People from different backgrounds, literally different countries, different religions, they're all coming. We're going to have a lot of Iranian flags. We're going to have a lot of American flags. We're going to have a lot of French flags, Israeli flags, Canadian flags. But they keep saying that this is a problem because they know this is not just about uniting this kingdom, it's about uniting the West against the liberal globalists. Last year, the United Kingdom rally had 23 arrests. Notting Hill Carnival, which is supposed to be a carnival in London, chaotic, 443 arrests. The Palestinian protest, over 500 arrests. As you can see in this photo, according to the government, the picture at the top, masked up Islamists.
Yeah. Nobody's showing their face except the guy behind the one that kind of looks like one of the dudes from D12. Bazaar's over there. And then you go to the other side, everybody's got bright colors on, faces all shown, waving flags, proud of their country. Who is this group on the top? If you didn't see the green, if you didn't see the scarf over here or the kafir, whatever they call it, if you didn't see that, you wouldn't even know this was in the same country.
Thugs, they are the good guys. At the bottom, families, children, men, women of all ages and all backgrounds, they are the bad guys. Now, the Independent Press Gallery has also condemned the banning of international journalists and commentators, saying Independent Press Gallery condemns Starmer's government for banning foreign journalists and commentators from the UK, and obviously for revoking or denying travel authorization to at least 8 foreign journalists, commentators and political figures ahead of this weekend's Tommy Robinson rally in London. Now, Ezra Levant, a good friend of ours from the Rebel Media in Canada, has decided to launch a counterattack on Keir Starmer's government. He's going to be taking legal action, and there's going to be a number of others who are going to be taking legal action against this authoritarian measure. We have also had members of the European Parliament who are literally part of centre-right movements and parties. Not even any sort of hard-right nationalist, ultra-nationalist party or group. Nope. Literally centre-right conservative-leaning parties in Europe. They have also been banned. This is absolutely fascinating. For example, Ezra Levant, who, by the way, is a Jew. Now, these guys have no evidence against Rebel Media that, for example, I think Abbey has also been banned from Australia. No evidence of any of these guys being ethno-nationalists. Nothing. But somehow, apparently, according to Keir Starmer, you could change the rules. This is communistic. Tommy has also responded by saying that my call to serving police officers working their shifts at our United Kingdom and United West rally tomorrow. This is a message from Tommy. Let's quickly go.
This is a direct message to any police officer serving tomorrow for the Metropolitan Police Force or drafted in from outside areas around the country, as I'm sure you're going to be, for the demonstration tomorrow. We are not the enemy. When you're getting suited and you're getting talking to by your superiors, because a lot of it's political policing, for a decade we were clashed against each other, purposely politically policed in order to create a violent, hostile situation where officers drew batons, officers were prepared wearing riot gear when they didn't need to be, and tensions rose time and time again. What we're asking you directly is please stand calm. We will do everything for our own supporters if they step out of line. Okay, we don't want clashes. So if you're senior ranking officers, and I'm going to share because there's a police officer who's telling us this is what they used to tell them. If they're preparing you for a big battle, we're not coming for a big battle. Okay, we are You're not going into a war against lots of hooligans tomorrow. The people that are there tomorrow are the people at the school gates with you. They're the people in Asda next to you, the people queuing up next to you in the bank, the everyday decent people. And we support you, the police. We know you've had your hands tied behind your back. The reputation of the Metropolitan Police Force has been dragged through the mud, through political policing. The best police force in the world become a laughingstock on the global stage. So a direct message is just don't draw your baton so easily to beating British protesters, please. Please allow for a moment of clarity and calmness, and allow other people to intervene to try and calm the situation, if any of these situations arise.
You know, it's crazy. I remember when he got arrested for reporting on a grooming gang case, and he was outside of the courtroom, and he had already been in trouble for reporting on something like this, where it was kind of a civil matter, but the state stepped in and just made it like, if you talk about it, we're going to throw you in jail. And he got arrested, and they locked him in there. I think it was like over a year, and he came out. He was starved. He was so thin, and he's not a big guy already. It's so crazy how he's not allowed to have his opinion, yet there's all these different groups that are allowed to hate him and denigrate him and say whatever they want about him. But when he mentions one thing about them, all of a sudden he gets hit with hate crimes and all this other stuff. It's really amazing what goes on in the United Kingdom nowadays. I mean, I think it was 12,000 people last year were arrested for things that they wrote online. I mean, to compare it to Russia, when we say like, oh, Russia is such a horrible country, Russia had like 300 and something people that were arrested for the stuff that they said online, which is crazy too. But 12,000 charges, like that's crazy.
We're coming for a family, beautiful celebration. Ignore what the government are telling you. They want you to clash. They want us to clash. We don't want to clash. I've sat with your senior ranking officers last year when they tried to put us against each other then. And we both understood what they were doing. We both agreed we want what's best for the public tomorrow. You want a safe environment. We want a safe environment. We don't want to be clashing with you guys. We support you. Okay? So we don't want you drawing batons on us. If your higher ranking officers are detailing you, and you know there's prams and there's women and there's old people, question what they're telling you. Question why. Is that the right decision for a safe environment for London tomorrow?
Yep.
And hopefully the message is filtered through your police force, because I know things have changed in our operation and the way we deal with you and your senior ranking officers in the negotiations and the planning for these events. But we are fully aware of the lengths this government are going to go to and want to go to try and cause disruption and chaos and anarchy on the streets of our capital city. They've done it last year, they attempted it. They will try something this year. So to the individual officer, to the young officers for the first time, in your riot gear on, we're not your enemy. We're not coming for a fight with you. We're coming to celebrate our country. We hope you celebrate it too. We want to be shaking your hands at the end of that event tomorrow. We want to be leaving with smiles on our faces and looking at that government and all of us, you and us, sticking our fingers up at them. Okay, because they did not succeed in what they wanted. We succeeded in uniting the kingdom, including you, the police, all right? God bless. We look forward to a fun and enjoyable day out tomorrow.
You know, the saddest part about that is that if there was, let's say, a bombing happened tomorrow and it kills a bunch of people from this march and rally, right? The UK government will blame Tommy Robinson for that. They won't blame the people that actually did it, even though they'll say, oh, this is an act of hate or violence, and they won't say it's an act of hate. They'll just say it was an act of violence, and it was because of Tommy Robinson's hate speech and others like him that caused that. So it's basically, you always see it whenever the right gets attacked, it's always blaming the victim.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Yes, but again, you're dealing with a very different class of politicians these days. Now, to compare the United Kingdom movement to the so-called pro-Palestinian protests, that's also a whole different problem for the politicians like Keir Starmer, because their double standards are getting exposed. We have a couple of reactions here. My two-tier Keir proves why he is not a good prime minister. Saying, are you going? We are. I've already mentioned that. I've already answered that. Starmer is in his mosque evening prayers. Tardy Terrence says, as much as I hate that lowlife, but tactically speaking, if he stays till next general election, he will lose. He's the most hated prime minister. He's not going to stay till the next election. The Labour MPs are making their move against him now. So he will not be prime minister at the next general election. He knows that as well, obviously. The UAE has cut off scholarships to the UK universities, mainly over Muslim radicalization concerns. Yes, Jeff. Again, let's quickly just show you the difference between the United Kingdom movement, the last rally, and the so-called Palestinian side. See? You got YMCA on one side, fighting with the police at the bottom. The pro-Palestinian side, every single time, they attack innocent civilians, they attack the police, they attack the buildings and properties, public properties, but apparently, that's fine. Keir Starmer...
Look at all those flags. All those country flags united. No flags except for that one Palestinian flag back there. Was it shut down the arms factories? Like, it's so dumb the way some people think the way the world really works. It's so dumb.
Would hang out with the Palestinian ambassador in London. He would shake hands with the from the river to the sea crowd, and he says these guys are allowed to do whatever they want to do. But of course, if you do YMCA and the Trump dance, you are a danger to the United Kingdom and to the West. This is the problem, because for a very long time, the rest of the mainstream, both politically and in terms of media, were going along with the narrative that, for example, somebody like Tommy Robinson is some sort of racist, fascist sort of character. The same Tommy Robinson who also spends a lot of time not just fighting for the United Kingdom, but also fights for everybody around the world to make sure they have life and freedom. Whether his support to the Indians in India when they are fighting against the Islamist terrorists, when it's their support for Israel and the right of Jews to live on this planet, or his support for the Iranian people in their fight against the Islamic occupation. Quickly go back to Tommy. He also said that we must not give them what they want. Everybody be on standby. His last message was to the police officers. This is to his supporters.
Britain, 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 to the Welsh, to the Scottish, to the Irish, to the Northern Irish, to the English. Let's do our country proud tomorrow, people. Let's make him look like the wanker he is. Yeah? Let's keep discipline. Let's keep under control. If you see anyone covering their face, pull them. If you see anyone step out of line, put them back in line. Let's police ourselves. Let's show ourselves.
Be vigilant.
British gentlemen. Okay? Disciplined, tough, ready, but disciplined. Okay? We're not here for trouble. We want it to be, we would. We're not. We're not here for trouble. Okay? Discipline yourselves, please. Bring that smile on your face. We've got a beautiful festival. We've got some beautiful performances. We are putting together a spectacular presentation for Britain that's going to be watched around every corner of this globe. The world's eyes are on London. Do your country
I'll be watching.
proud, loud and proud. Our English pride we will not hide. Okay? Same for all of you lot from every other corner of Britain. 4 nations, 1 kingdom. Let's do it with a smile on our face, people. Let's absolutely humiliate him. I can see the videos going out on the Sunday. Let's humiliate him. Yeah? Let's put the final nail in that mug's coffin. Love ya. Bring your smiles. A lot of effort and work has gone into this from lots of people. Please don't let us down. Please. If ever there was a moment to bite your lip, to hold your tongue, to not rise to the bait, it's tomorrow. It's the most important day. In my generation, I think. The world's watching. There's never been a gathering like this in Great Britain. Never. Never been it. It's never happened like this. Okay? Something's happening, something's moving. We do it as proud Christian men. Disciplined, proud Christian men. Love ya. Says one.
Love how towards the end it was going up and up, and then it was like, see you tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, obviously, we are expecting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to come to Westminster. It's going to be a very, very challenging day for the organisers, for the rest of our team, for, of course, the police, because they also have to have the far left who are going to be protesting. They have to have them to deal with as well. But Keir Starmer has already declared war. We already know where we stand with the government. Now we'll see how the police, individual police officers, would operate on the day. All of a sudden, laws matter? Yeah, only when it comes to British patriots. We cannot wait for politicians to save us. Everyone is mixing every single day. Yet the same comment we get every single week from this person. Why do the Brits put up with this? Appears they have lost their national identity, or perhaps now that identity is Muslim or Indian, African, anything but Britain. There's a slight difference there, but no, I mean, the problem is that you have to wait for a general election. We still have a democratic system, regardless of when the democratically elected politicians become a little bit mental, you have to wait for the next election to then vote them out. Same thing happened with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was president for 4 years. You have to wait for the election, and then you kick him out and you bring President Trump in. Dear Starmer, we need vision about US like an old... I quit streeting. Why is streeting getting involved in this? Have they banned the IRGC yet? No, absolutely not. It was funny because it was about 3 months ago, there was an announcement by the British government that they were going to ban the IRGC. This was followed by what the European Union did. Canada already did it with Justin Trudeau, and then the European Union eventually did it this year. And when the uprising was happening, the British government made the announcement, we also will be banning the IRGC. And everybody got excited. And immediately on that day, I did obviously live.
I remember they were all like, oh, we're neutral, everything like that. And then the Iranians like, no, you're not neutral. If you don't step in and stop them, we're going to make you pay for it. Then the Brits were like, oh, you can't do that. The French, the Germans. But to be honest with you, Europe has become useless to the rest of the world. They just, especially in America, like Britain has just become, not just Britain, the entire EU has just become a thorn in our ass, dude. Like, what do they do for us? What do we do for them? It's completely imbalanced. And anytime we ask them to help us out something, they're just like, oh, it's not our fight. It's not what we're supposed to do. Dude, we stopped them from walking through Ukraine, and God knows where else it would have went from after that. You know, like we're doing all this and the Germans still buying their fuel from the Russians. Like the EU has become useless. They have become their own worst enemy.
For you guys, and I said, wait, don't celebrate yet.
And I know Britain is not in the EU anymore, but basically, if you look at the way Keir Starmer has been running it, he has his views line perfectly with the EU still.
read the blueprint. Because when I read the actual proposal, I realized that they're not doing that. They're not doing that. They said, oh, we will be holding consultations over the next year, and then maybe after 2026, 2027, we might do it then. Now, in the recent days, there's been more pressure, and they said, yeah, we might actually do it soon, again, but we are still waiting. So if you do an IRGC rally, you will be allowed, you will be free to do it, and they have done it many times. But if you do a United Kingdom, United West rally, then you'll be in trouble. First time will be out of office soon. Effing pure insanity. Good is inverted while evil is encouraged. Satanic bees. He's trying to incite violence to be seen as a proven right and save his job, and will then link any trouble to reform voters too. Stay safe. Yes, as I said, when a political leader, whether it's in a democracy or a dictatorship, when they're in trouble, one of the dirty tactics that they can use is to cause a national crisis. When there's crisis and conflict, then obviously you can use certain measures in the name of national security, and you can also distract the rest of the public. And you say, hey, I know you're angry at me right now, but I'm the Prime Minister right now, where we have a big problem. We've got enemies on the streets. So just bear with me while we introduce more authoritarian, tyrannic laws. That's the point of when political leaders, when they become desperate and weak, they do this all the time. In dictatorships, they basically start wars. And that's what the Islamic Republic in Iran have been doing. When they know they're in crisis, they itch for war. Obviously, in more domestic political issues, when it comes to the UK, for example, Starmer is having internal problems, so he's going to have some sort of internal crisis in the country to basically distract the minds. The problem is the whole thing is backfiring on him already. Even some Labour MPs are looking at what he said and saying it's going to backfire, because the people who are going to the rally tomorrow, a lot of them used to vote for Labour, used to vote for the Tories or whatever, and you still want to change their mind. That's your job as a political party. Obviously, they're not going to vote for Labour at this point, but you can't really call them enemy. It's just bad tactics. Terrible idea. Yeah, Polish MP, well, MEP, not MP, been banned. Dominic. As a diplomatic passport, he said he's going to sue Starmer. And there's been a number of them, as I said earlier, who are suing Starmer's government. The problem is you can't and you shouldn't sue Keir Starmer. Anybody who wants to sue Starmer, it's a very bad tactic. You have to sue the Home Office, the government, and not the individual Prime Minister. That's not how the system works in the UK. But of course, if you're from Europe or Canada or the US, you probably don't know how the system works in the UK. If you sue the Prime Minister, you're going to lose the battle.
All right, well, that was his earlier show. Let's check this one out where he was talking more about the crisis in Iran right now going on. Tusi's, I believe, Iranian, talks a lot more about it. Him and the Goldie Gamari, and I'm blanking on the other dude, but there's a bunch of great coverage on the Iranian war. Goldie Gamari is aces. Armin is the other one. He has a big channel. He does a lot of brainstorming with other people. Yeah. They're interesting to watch.
Welcome to Tusi TV. This is your global news channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and the IRGC are now being challenged with an expected crisis as oil spillage continues across the Persian Gulf along the coastline, and the Islamic Republic have now reached max oil storage capacity around the Kharg Islands. So this is a huge victory for the United States of America. Without a single shot being fired, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is paralyzing the regime from within. They are now also struggling to even pay their own members' wages. We're going to give you guys the latest updates on what's going on in Iran as the currency, rial, is collapsing once again. It's basically flatlining at this point because it's struggling to even bounce back. Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, also have some info from what's actually been happening inside the country. If you're a member of Tusi TV Plus, straight after this live stream, we're going to continue the conversation with the members on our chat forum. Make sure to go on the website, tusi.tv, click on discuss, get access to the private Discord server, and obviously I'll give you guys the information later. All right, first things first, let's go to...
Right now, America has a shortage of over 20,000 gunsmiths.
Iran, and our interactive map, according to the US Treasury, to the south of the country, right around here, we got the Kharg Island. You can see, there we go. And also along the coastline, we have a video from Iran showing the oil spillage, which is getting worse and worse. It's an environmental disaster at this point. But around Kharg Island, so all the way from here, and of course, also from Bandar Ariq.
None of the main news outlets are covering, even talking about this. And this has been going on for over a week now. They've been seeing the oil slicks. It's been washing up on their shorelines now. It's completely covered. It's devastating the fish and wildlife, and yet nobody cares. Everybody just keeps saying how, we're the bad guys, whatever, we're the baddies. But these people are doing horrific stuff. Like, they're trying to punish the rest of the world because they're losing their power.
To probably around here, and of course Bushehr as well. All these areas, and down here, let's do another line. There we go. All the way around here, we have massive problems with oil spillage because they don't know what to do anymore. They have to now They are now considering to completely shut down oil production and pumping out oil because they don't know what to do with it. It's almost impossible for them to even try to smuggle it out via the Pakistani border, because they have considered that. They have attempted to send out some of the petrol out. So from all the way from here, around Bushehr to Pakistan, they have done a few routes where they were basically transporting some of the oil, but that has not really been effective. So they are definitely struggling. According to Scott Bessent, saying that not only that the Iranian oil storage is 100% full, they can't sell, but their soldiers and members are not getting paid. We also have a video from one of the members of the IRGC who has leaked some information about what actually they're eating, because they're only eating potatoes at this point. Scott Besson says, Kharg Island, we've seen that there have been no loadings in the past 3 days completely, because obviously they have been trying to load over the last few weeks. They tried to leave the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans stopped them. They go back. So they've got to stop doing that now. Scott Besson says, we believe their storage is full. None of the ships are getting out, none are coming in, so they are not able to store oil underwater, so they're going to start shutting down their production. We can see that that's happening from satellite photos, but more importantly, this is a diabolical regime. They're not able to replenish their weapons stock from abroad, so I think they are on their last legs. The blockade, President Trump's blockade, has been a resounding success. So this is the video I'm going to show you now from the Persian Gulf. 80,000 barrels of oil now being spilled into the sea near the Kharg Island. You can see the thick oil sludge coating Iran's coastline as it spreads through, obviously, the whole of the Persian Gulf. Satellite imagery shows that over the last few days, the massive oil slick stretching across dozens of square kilometers near Iran's main oil export hub is continuing. Let's go to the video from the coastline of Iran. He's saying a lot of fish have died. The guy in the video is saying that a lot of sea life, fish, believe some birds have all died, and he says that the whole island has been destroyed by the regime. God help us all. That's basically what the man was saying in the video. This is disgusting. I mean, we did see some satellite imagery that we showed you, I think about a few days ago on this channel, which showed just outside around the Kharg Island and, of course, the coastline in Iran. You could see the black marks. That was basically the oil in the water. But this is the first time we're actually getting raw footage, actual videos coming in. You can see the black sludge everywhere, which, again, on the one hand, it shows a disaster for the actual the resources in Iran when it comes to oil. But at the same time, the environmental damage is also insane. So a lot of things are happening at the same time, but the regime don't care. So one of the things that they're dealing with right now is angry members. Their own mercenaries are now filming and leaking information to the outside world because they have access to the internet. Don't forget about that. The regime have access to the internet. Not only they're not getting paid, according to one of them, I'm going to show you the video, I'm going to translate what he's saying, but they're giving them 1 potato a day and a couple of pickled cucumbers, basically, or gherkin. Watch this.
ببینید اینم از غذایی که ما می‌خوریم از صبح تا شب جون می‌کنیم آخرش هم غذایی که بهمون میدن حقوقم که دیگه هیچ. It says but they're not giving us any money anymore.
Getting a potato and like 2 baby pickles, bro. This is not going to last too much longer. I'm telling you, it's not going to last too much longer.
And we work hard every single day. Day in and out, and then of course they're only giving us potatoes and pickled cucumbers. That's all they're getting. Obviously, people at the top are still having a great luxury life. It's just obviously the minions at the bottom of the regime who are not getting anything anymore. They can't even pay their own rents, and they're not going to have access anymore to basic resources, including heating, because things are not going too well. Also, at the same time, the regime are focusing on pushing for more war because they've been itching for the return of the conflict, because that's the only way they can have some sort of a distraction and also basic unity inside the regime, because the so-called ceasefire and the blockade of Hormuz is paralyzing and obviously has caused a massive infighting. The only good news for the regime in Iran is that the big infighting and the coup has now stopped, basically, because Ahmad Vahidi, who's the leader of the IRGC, who's basically in charge of the country, his side have won. They are now in charge. So they're infighting. They have been successfully crushing the other side of the regime and the government. And so technically, things are calm, relatively, but obviously the rest of them are not helping the others. So it's not looking good. But they are focusing on...
Yeah, but they're eating each other, and there's a whole rebellion growing. And we're training people, and it's just not gonna go good for Iran. We don't got too much longer to deal with these people. They're gonna be free, and it's gonna be a new start.
On inviting the Americans back into Iran. So this is Ebrahim Azizi, who's the head of the National Security and Foreign Policy Commission. He and the government, the legislators, have now announced a 50 million euros bill for the assassination of President Trump. Anybody, anywhere in the world, if they are able to successfully take out President Trump, they will be getting 50 million euros. Now, 50 million euros in Iran is huge because the currency has collapsed. But they've saved up their money. That's part of the government.
It's like a million denarii dollars or Iranian dollars to one. I can't remember what the hell their dollar is, but it's $1 million to one right now or over.
Budget, and they basically introduced this new bill in Parliament in Tehran in order to do this. Now, after the first two, we've already had 2 failed assassination attempts against President Trump that were tied to the IRGC. Obviously, overall, we had about 3 or 4, but 2 of them were linked to the IRGC over the last 2-3 years. And but now they think that it's probably best if they just create some sort of reward. So anybody out there, whether you're a Democrat or a trans activist or whatever you are, you can try to take out President Trump and you get paid by the regime in Iran. The issue is that they don't understand. I mean, there will be some crazy people who think that they're going to get paid, but you're not going to get paid. Even if you successfully take out President Trump, the US Treasury is not going to allow you to get paid. But the whole thing makes no sense. They are just desperate to provoke President Trump to return to the conflict. Meanwhile, the rest of the proxies and Islamists, including the ones in Gaza, have been continuing to refuse to disarm, and they've been obviously rallying the troops to attack Israel again. The IDF and Mossad discovered what was happening in Gaza over the last week or so. They received the approval and the green light from the Israeli government in order to carry out an assassination against the Hamas leader, the military leader, is al-Din al-Haddad in Gaza. Mossad and the IDF intelligence were operating for about a week and a half, monitoring his behavior, where he's going, what sort of movement he's having. Eventually, a few hours ago, in Gaza, the Israeli Defense Forces carried out this massive assassination. This is the video. Now, we have been in touch with the IDF. The initial assessment suggests that the assassination has been successful, but we have to wait for confirmation that they have to see it with their own eyes to ensure that the Hamas military leader has been taken out. This will be a huge move in the fight against the Islamic Republic's proxies, because in terms of senior and experienced leaders that they have, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas, there are not many of them left, because the more the Israelis take them out, the more they have to promote the younger ones and the inexperienced ones. So there's only a few left who are from the old guard of the IRGC's proxies. But this is a statement from Israel Katz, the defense minister in Israel, saying, under the direction of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and myself, the IDF is now striking in Gaza against the arch murderer al-Din al-Haddad, the leader of the military wing of Hamas, and one of the architects of October 7th massacre. Haddad was responsible for the murder, abduction, and injury of thousands of Israeli civilians and IDF soldiers. He held our hostages in cruel captivity, launched terrorist attacks against our forces, and refused to implement the agreement led by US President Trump to disarm Hamas of its weapons and demilitarize the Gaza Strip. He continued by saying that the IDF and Shin Bet are effectively implementing the government's policy of containing threats and preemptively thwarting our enemies. We will continue to act with strength and determination against anyone who took part in the October 7th invasion. This is a clear message to all the murderers who seek our lives. Sooner or later, Israel will get you. And of course, this is the wider message, not just to the proxies, but to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Tehran. The Israelis obviously have confirmed that they are not done. We also had President Trump earlier on saying, well, late last night, essentially, President Trump said that the military decimation of Iran to be continued. So the job is not done yet, but they're just waiting for the blockade of Hormuz to continue doing its job. And obviously, it's doing a great job, because the IRGC can't even pay their own members. And obviously, the more that happens, the easier it will get to bring down the regime when the Iranian people, led by the Immortal Guard, are called out to come out to take to the streets. At that moment, you're going to have a lot of these police officers and soldiers and whatever they are, security officials, as part of the current regime in Iran. They're not going to have any appetite to follow orders to kill their own people. As they also did, obviously, in January, in the uprising, a lot of them refused to follow the orders, just disappeared. That's why the Islamic Republic had to bring in mercenaries from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan to carry out the massacre. There is also the situation with the visit of President Trump to Beijing. Successfully, apparently, according to the US government, discussions between President Trump and Xi Jinping managed to get China to at least publicly take the American side, because they have to. I've been saying this for the past 2-3 years, that at the end of the day, the likes of China and Russia will only support their own partners and allies when those guys are useful and are strong. Perfect example is Syria under Assad. The moment that place was going down, Russians just stopped supporting it and say, okay, you can come to Moscow, you can stay here, we'll get you an apartment, but Syria is gone. Same thing in Iran. China and Russia, they had a chance to get involved last year in June, a year ago, during the 12-day war. They didn't get involved. Obviously, Tucker Carlson promised you World War III. Didn't happen. They also had another opportunity to get involved 2 months ago. Tucker Carlson said there's going to be World War III. Russia and China didn't get involved. Obviously, indirectly, they'll continue to support the regime. That's different. But they did not join the conflict because they realized the regime in Iran is not winning anymore. There's no point. You could give them a bit of support because of the alliance that they have. Yeah. But the conversations between the Americans and Chinese includes several pressure points. So in terms of the nuclear pressure, China has now said that the Islamic Republic should never obtain a nuclear weapon. That's the US position now. In terms of the Strait of Hormuz, China said that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open without any toll, any payments system or anything like that. That's obviously the IRGC want to create a new system. The Americans and the Chinese now agree that it should be open. The reason for that is because China didn't really care whether Hormuz was open or closed, because China had a relationship with the IRGC to allow the Chinese vessels and tankers to come in and go out. But since the US blockade started, the Chinese vessels have been struggling. One or two of them did go through, but obviously most of them got stuck. And they realized, well, America's more powerful than the regime in Iran. So the Chinese said, yeah, actually, we're always on the same page. The Hormuz should be open, because they know they can't really go to the Strait of Hormuz anymore. China is obviously prioritizing itself, not their so-called junior partners in Iran. In terms of the security, they have said that they will not send weapons to the IRGC. Obviously, they're saying that they could lie, but the Americans will be keeping an eye on the satellites and everything else to ensure that that doesn't happen. Yeah. And the US-China trade compared to the Iran and China trade, you can't even compare that. And President Xi knew this. That the reason that Beijing held this massive banquet and the red carpet and the YMCA, everything when President Trump came, because this visit could have been an extremely cold and clinical visit. But it was with a lot of pomp. It seemed like they're two allies. Obviously, they're not allies.
You remember when Joe Biden went over there and they had all the military and they were looking dead at Biden? This time, what did Beijing had? They had a bunch of kids, schoolgirls, waving American and Chinese flags because they know their air defense is useless against us. And so is the Russians, because we literally shut it off in Venezuela. They still don't know how we did it. And then we just went above their air defenses, the same air defenses that were in Iran. So, like, there's nothing China or Russia can do. Like, I honestly think the Taiwan wouldn't even need us right now to be, because people don't understand. Taiwan has an alliance with Japan, Korea, and I think the Philippines. Maybe Vietnam is trying to get into it now because they keep getting bullied by the Chinese. But like, the entire aspect of geopolitics has changed in a matter of a year and a half, 2 years. Like it's amazing to me what it's like to have an effective world leader, an effective president who has become the world leader. Like Obama, you could say Obama had that charismatic feel to him, but he was kind of useless as a leader. He was basically a puppet. Biden has no balls. Like Biden didn't even know where he was half the time. I mean, Kamala Harris was drunk all day, drunk popping pills. You could see the way she talks. You could see it in her interviews. Even today or a couple of days ago, she had an interview. She's an embarrassment to even be considered to lead the United States. It's hilarious to me. And then, like, when you say things like that, they'll be like, "Oh, because she's a black or she's a woman," and it's like, no, because she's a drunk and she's useless.
Rivals, but China had to take this seriously because the trade between the US and China is over $400 billion. Now, that's every year. But China and Iran trade is tiny, and it's only in millions of dollars, tens of millions, and also it's one-sided. So it's not really in the interest of China to sacrifice its own position by trying to get involved in the war in Iran, because they know if they want to use the hard power, it's probably best to save it for Taiwan. They really care about Taiwan. Why would they waste the hard power for a dying regime in Iran? Mike Waltz, the US ambassador, also said that this was a huge outcome after the visit by President Trump. Let's quickly go to Mike. Mike Waltz.
And I've got to tell you, to see the Chinese backing away from Iran after meeting with President Trump was a huge outcome of this.
How did they back away from Iran?
Well, they said they agree. No nukes, no militarization of the Straits of Hormuz. And you can't be tolling the Straits of Gibraltar, Straits of Malacca, or the Straits of Hormuz because you see it as a source of revenue. So that was a huge step.
And you're confident that he was telling the truth to you when he said that they're not supplying anything to Iran?
Well, we've seen China backing away even from some of this dual use, but the blockade is preventing it one way or another.
Well, they were. But I don't think it's working. It's not any good against our technology, against our equipment. They just can't hang with us. The Chinese sell bootleg versions of our stuff and the Russian stuff. They're not really innovators. They're duplicators.
And the blockade is key.
And the last part is the main point, because obviously, as anybody would say, well, like, do you trust China? They would just say that. Obviously, they would just say that. Yeah, obviously, if they just say something, oh, yeah, we're not going to send weapons to Iran. You can't believe them. But the main point is, they got China to say it, but it's not really about what they say. It's not even about them saying, yeah, of course, we're going to agree. It's about the fact that they can't.
Yeah.
Because the Americans are controlling the Strait of Hormuz. So
Exactly.
China had to say that because they knew that at this point it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They can't actually send anything through the Strait.
Like, don't worry, we're not gonna step in anymore. Well, because it didn't work the first, the second, the third time you tried to step in. You tried to arm them, you tried to give them all this equipment, and all you did was make money off it, and you just lost your ally because now they're gonna get overthrown and they're gonna be the ally to the West. They don't want to be in this allegiance with the Chinese and the Russians. They want to be a free, independent country, and they want to be able to sell their oil wherever they want to sell their oil. Not be blackmailed because they're blackballed by the Americans. So therefore, hey, if you want to sell your oil, you can sell it to us. It benefited China and Russia for the IRGC to stay in power. Once the IRGC is out of power, it no longer benefits the Russians or the Chinese or the Pakistanis for that matter, because the Pakistanis are close allies with the Iranians, and Pakistan is basically owned by the Chinese. I mean, the Chinese through the Belt and Road Initiative own all the bridges. They own all of their major roadways. They own all the railways, and they basically own their ports. So what else could the Pakistanis do? They can't do anything but try to initiate a ceasefire because it's messing up. It's messing up their money as much as it's messing up anybody else's.
Hormuz. And any cargo plane that goes through Iran is being monitored. But again, the problem is also about what's going to happen to the junior members in the regime. That's why you have so many foreigners right now walking around the street of Iran. The people you see all these rallies, that is dying down a little bit in Iran, the pro-regime rallies, they're all foreigners. Now, the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, has released a new statement saying that he's now requested the Iran Transitional Justice Regulation Committee, basically this is part of the transitional government that is announced as the opposition, to provide its opinion on two important matters. First, the criminal liability of those in the regime who collaborated with the structure in Iran of the Islamic Republic to basically harm the citizens of Iran. And secondly, the confiscation of the property of protesters and their families. Basically, the Crown Prince is preparing before the final call to get the Immortal Guard and the Iranian people to come to the streets again. You have to get things ready behind the scenes, and this is part of their messaging. Let's quickly go to the Crown Prince with the English subtitles, and then we're going to get your reaction.
همیهنان عزیزم، در روزهایی که شما با شجاعت در برابر رژیم اشغالگر ایران ایستاده اید، این نظام منفور و منزوی همچنان به تجاوز به جان و مال مردم ادامه می‌دهد تا سرنگونی حتمی خود را اندکی به تعویق اندازد. در چنین شرایطی وظیفه خود می‌دانم که تصویر عدالت در فردای ایران را برای کسانی که با جنایتکاران همکاری کنند روشن‌تر ترسیم کنم. در این راستا از کمیته تدوین مقررات عدالت انتقالی ایران خواستم درباره دو موضوع مهم نظر مشورتی خود را ارائه کند. نخست، موضوع مسئولیت کیفری افرادی که با ساختارهای سرکوبگر جمهوری اسلامی همکاری می‌کنند و دوم، موضوع مصادره اموال معترضان و خانواده‌های آنان. این کمیته اکنون نخستین نظر مشورتی خود را صادر کرده و پیام آن روشن است. این اقدامات همکاری‌های ساده یا بی‌اهمیت نیستند، بلکه یاری رسانی به جنایت علیه بشریت محسوب می‌شوند. هیچ مقام، هیچ دستور و هیچ بهانه‌ای نمی‌تواند مسئولیت کیفری فردی را از میان ببرد. بنابراین هر فردی که آگاهانه و داوطلبانه با ساختارهای سرکوبگر رژیم همکاری کند، چه در داخل و چه در خارج از ایران، باید بداند که در معرض مسئولیت کیفری قرار خواهد گرفت. خواه این همکاری از نوع گزارش‌دهی یا خبرچینی باشد، خواه از نوع مشارکت در ایست‌های بازرسی باشد، خواه از نوع بکارگیری کودکان و نوجوانان در سرکوب معترضان باشد، و خواه از نوع تحصیل، انتقال یا
Yeah, they got like 11-year-old kids as their military checkpoint guys. Like they got women brigades running around in full burqas or hijab, whatever the one is where they just show their face. It's laughable right now what's happening with the IRGC. And for anybody to prop them up and say that they're not going to lose or they're going to hang in there, you're out of your mind, dude. Like, it's already over. We could leave now. We can go home and they'll be collapsed within a few months. But we're not going to do that because midterms are coming up. We got to wrap this up by midsummer at least. So it's going to happen real soon. And that's why Trump went to China, talked to Xi. By the time Xi comes to America with the invite in September, this will be all wrapped up. And they'll be discussing to us where they want to go forward with, because we're taking the refineries back. We got light mineral refineries, heavy mineral refineries. We got heavy crude, light crude refineries opening up. Like, we're jumping immediately back into the game at a record pace that nobody could even explain how this is happening. And it really should piss a lot of people off, the fact that this guy can come in here in 2 years, shut the border down, and then three wars that we've been talking about have been inevitable for our entire lifespan, my entire lifespan, 40 years, and this dude gets it done in less than 2 years. It's crazy to me that we can look back at any other president in my lifetime and think that they were legit leaders. They weren't. They were puppets of the state. They were puppets of everything. This is so crazy to me. Like, and people are pissed. People hate this because there's a lot of self-loathing Americans, or even in general, let's just say self-loathing Westerners, that feel like they're so much superior to the rest of the people because they got degrees or they went to college, and they feel like it's, I'm trying to think, what is it? It's such like a false narrative. You know what I mean? Like, they try to pin everything that he does, and you can never argue with a leftist today. You have to remember what they said today and bring it up in a month or two and see what they say. They will tell you to your face they didn't say that. Even if you play the video back, they will try to twist their own words and what they're trying to explain to you. You know, it's such a pedantic type of mindset on the left, and even in some on the right, especially when it comes to geopolitics. You got guys like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell that, you know, in that aspect of the Republican Party, who just think like they're all for the war, but like they don't want to explain to you what their end goal of the war is. Trump is like, listen, we just want to clear these dudes out and help them rebuild, and they will be an ally to us, right? It's not like, oh, you owe us this. Yeah, we'll get the oil at a good price, but it's like you're going to sell it to the global market anyway. So, like, I think this is only to reserve the power of the dollar, because our dollar is based off rare mineral connections and the amount of minerals that are produced within a year and how much are sold as the American dollar. The Saudis moved off of our dollar. UAE just left the OPEC, and now they're selling. They want to double their capacity, but they want to do it with the dollar. So we have allies, and we have a lot of, the problem is we have a lot of allies that aren't really our allies. They're not really our friends. They'll talk like they're our friends, but at any moment they'll stab us right in the back, take advantage of us. This is what they've been doing for generations. And so now that Trump's in here, of course they don't like it. They don't like that Trump is winning, that we are winning. They don't like that. They want us to lose. It's a demoralization campaign. This is why they keep bringing in mass influx of immigration, is because they've been telling the Western populations not to have children for so long, yet we bring in people who have kids and we glorify them. Oh, strong family values. Well, where did our family values go? We had strong family values. Where did they go?
خرید و فروش اموالی باشد که در جریان سرکوب از معترضان و خانواده‌های آنان مصادره شده است. از این رو نه تنها افرادی که در صدور دستور، اجرای آن یا تسهیل این مصادره ها نقش دارند در معرض مسئولیت قرار خواهند گرفت، بلکه کسانی که آگاهانه و داوطلبانه به خرید و فروش این اموال میپردازند نیز باید پاسخگو باشند. این مسئولیت استفاده از اموال یا دارایی‌های آنان برای جبران خسارت وارد شده به مالکان اصلی را نیز شامل می‌شود. بنابراین به همه کسانی که امروز در صدد همکاری با دستگاه سرکوب رژیم هستند هشدار می‌دهم: پیش از آن که دست به اقدامی بزنید که به مردم ایران آسیب جانی، مالی و یا اجتماعی برساند، به آینده خود و خانواده‌تان بیاندیشید. به آن روز بیاندیشید که ایران آزاد خواهد شد، روزی که حقیقت پنهان نخواهد ماند، روزی که اسامی آشکار خواهد شد، روزی که هیچ متجاوز و جنایتکاری از پاسخگویی در برابر قانون در امان نخواهد ماند. آن روز ملت ایران حکومتی خواهد داشت که حقوق ایرانیان را محترم می‌دارد و ایران را به سرزمینی آزاد و آباد بدل می‌کند. پاینده ایران.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we can now quickly go as the Israeli Defense Forces have just launched a massive strike on IRGC's Hezbollah wing in the Tyre. Let's quickly go and see what is going on over there.
Hey everybody, Peach here, and today we're going to take a look at the speedy and...
Well, as commercial is going, I just want to explain to people too, the only reason why Hezbollah even exists is kind of the IDF's fault. the Hezbollah is basically the Muslim wing that was pushed out of northern Israel into Lebanon, and they slowly took Lebanon over. Lebanon was the last Christian country in that area. I think the only one left now is Armenia on the other side of on the other side of Turkey. Like, it's not like that was a Christian country, and they got dominated by radical Islam, and the Hezbollah has been funded from Iran. So now Hezbollah they're not getting backed anymore. The Palestinians, the Gaza, who are the people? Hamas ain't getting backed by Iran anymore. And there's nothing that can be done about it. So this war is not going to continue forever because they can't anymore. Their money bags are gone. Who are they going to go to get their money now?
صار الدمار بالاستهداف تبع سوريا. استهداف كبير ومرعب كان وعدة إصابات من العالم البعيد اللي كانت موجودة على الخط البحري. الحجارة كانت عم تتطاير وين ما كان.
So we don't know what they've hit yet. 30 have been injured apparently. Okay, we'll figure out. We're waiting for the statement to find out what they have taken out. The Israeli Defense Forces entire, but that was a big hit, obviously. So the Islamic Republic, obviously, in terms of the results so far of this conflict, they've lost their military bases, their air force has been completely hammered. The IRGC Navy have lost all their big vessels and assets. They just have the little tiny boats, the speedboats. They've lost their military leaders. They've lost their political leaders. They've lost their supreme leader. They have now obviously lost access, to trade when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. Their oil storage capacity has now reached their maximum, and they can't even pay their own members' wages. They can't transfer money or weapons to their proxies, and everything is going absolutely fine. So it seems like the regime in Iran continue to struggle, and President Trump, without even a single shot being fired in the last few weeks, continues to reduce the regime and their capabilities. Of course, their nuclear capability has also been
choking them out,
massively reduced, and the ballistic missile program. So it seems to be an extremely one-sided war so far, but let's quickly get some reaction while we wait for intel from the Israeli Defense Forces on what they actually hit in Tyre. What would your dad consider a victory, defeat of the regime, when the regime surrenders or gets dragged out? Please stay safe tomorrow. I need my daily dose of 2CTV. Yes, don't worry, I'll be fine. Tomorrow is our rally, of course, the United Kingdom rally in central London. I will be there making a speech. We just got update, by the way, that our good friend Nick Shirley from the United States has successfully managed to enter the United Kingdom.
Shirley will be there. Surely he will.
Despite the fact that Keir Starmer has been trying to ban everybody from coming to Britain for this for tomorrow's rally, Nick Shirley is coming tomorrow, and he's going to be making a speech at the United Kingdom protest. Which rebel group will be first to openly fight the IRGC for control? You just listed all of them. Yeah. Free Iran, Javid Shah. Iran, I hope, is free before 2026 ends. Well, I've always said this will be a very long campaign because of how big Iran is as a country and how ruthless the IRGC are. They don't tend to just surrender. You're going to have to drag them out. Your hair looks fabulous today, says Snook. Thank you. Kevin says, any statement from Shah Reza Pahlavi today? I'm assuming Kevin's posted that before I showed you the video of the Crown Prince. When the money stops flowing to their soldiers and mercenaries, the game will soon be over. But again, it will be the next stage, the next phase, which will be what they call the final battle. It's only at that point that what you said, Marcus, can be assessed, because that's when we can judge the behavior of those who haven't been getting paid, because they know that the regime is not on their side. They don't even care about their own people. The US should just offer a bag of potatoes to IRGC members to retire their bosses. If oil gets on your Navy ships, we should build them.
Dogs around them.
News just in, Tucker has a new baby rattle. Okay. The final battle may be much more decisive now. The troops are opening their eyes to one potato and dill pickle every day.
Where has Tucker been?
Yeah, no, it's a slow death. We could probably start the revolution in Iran by sending a Costco.
Tucker's been quiet last few weeks. He's been proven wrong in everything that he said so far. You kind of seen it coming. Like when he was at the end of his days on Fox News, he was saying some things, but like he was telling you about the COVID, the jabs, the stabby jabbies, whatever, dude. I already said it. But like at the same time, he was like, now I've gotten the vaccine. I've done it, but I wouldn't tell you to do it. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. Whatever he does. But Tucker's really proven himself to be a psyop, and a lot of people on the right have started to do it. The surprise to me is Alex Jones. I don't know if it's because he's in debt and he's getting money from somebody. You know, it's really sad to see Alex Jones like that. Owen Schroyer, I'm not really surprised at that. Like, I remember when he was, if you ever seen that, "You're a white male," the kid with the long hair, yeah, that was the first time Owen Schroyer was on InfoWars. And they made it seem like he was there and it was a random thing. No, he went with the producer from InfoWars there. Like, the kid went to school for sports broadcasting or something, so he was already seasoned to be on the screen. And so the fact that he's switching up like this is crazy to me. I really don't get it. And now he's calling everybody MAGA. He's basically turned into like an MSNBC reporter. Like, he sounds like one of them from the 2019, 2018. You know, he went to jail really because he put his nose in somewhere he shouldn't have been. You know, he was outside hanging out with was it Bryson Gray that night? You know, sitting back like they did something. But, you know, you had to earn it, Owen. You went to jail for it. And, you know, good for you, dude. You stuck to your guns, you know, but at the same time, switching up like that, bro, is crazy to me. But I've never really watched Owen Schroyer. I didn't even really watch Candace Owens, who was a liberal originally. Her name used to be Red Pill Black. And then I think it was after Gamergate, where she was asking questions and her leftist allies all turned on her and started harassing her. And that made her conservative. Everything that she says, she probably stands on some of it, but a lot of it is talking points. You know, a lot of people get confused, like, all of your main people are switching up, and, you know, they don't even like Trump anymore. It's just like they're doing a job. You know what I mean? A lot of people come into media, they're not really about the game. They're playing a character. You know? So you see a lot of this turncoating on Trump. They're getting quiet and nobody's watching them anymore, because now that it's kind of moving back the way it should have been, they kind of look stupid. They look stupid and they jump the gun, kind of like you should have held off a little bit longer. This is a midterms thing, you know? Why would they turn on Trump on the year of midterms? I think this is all a reach to split the Republican Party in two, in which that's basically what they tried to do when Trump was elected in the first place. And a lot of these people who became the biggest streamers on the right only became the biggest streamers on the right because they were backing Trump the whole time. And that's what most people wanted who voted for Trump. And, you know, like you hear the left, you know, make all these excuses and all this. And, it should have been majority. Trump won everything last time. He won all 7 swing states. He won 32 states or something like that. And he won the majority vote. So they can't even make that argument. You know, like this is a turning of the tide. You're seeing it in Britain. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if by the end of this weekend, Raul Castro is in New York City in the next cell right next to Maduro.
Hot dogs. Costco also apparently sell Iranian flags in LA, which is quite good. Pakistan is smuggling Iran oil through its land border and highly likely selling it to China. Shocking part, Trump knows this. Yeah, of course, everyone knows. I already showed you on the map the border crossings, and the Irish have kind of stopped now because that was not the most effective way of getting the oil out of Iran. It was too much hassle, and it was completely chaotic. Now you can see the spillage across the Persian Gulf, because even that method, you can't trust the Pakistanis to be organized and disciplined. That was the problem. Is it time to take out the pumps to the oil wells? Not really, because they can't really produce anymore. They're going to shut down the whole thing themselves.
Yeah, no, they're don't get in your enemy's way when they're destroying themselves, dude.
How come Iran didn't do a preemptive strike while Trump was in China? Because the Islamic Republic is not holding any cards or any strength. They can't. You're not dealing with a strong military or a strong country in that sense. They are a bunch of terrorists who are hiding in bunkers and caves, and they come out every now and then with their missile launchers and then go back in hiding. They're not brave. It's not like you're dealing with some sort of like massive communist Russia army where they come standing in front of you with their tanks and everything else. They're just a bunch of weirdos.
They're getting out, telling the children and the women to fight, and then they get back in their bunkers and they stuff their fat faces of greed.
Who are just occupying Iran as a country. But if they do any sort of preemptive, well, they'll be completely destroyed. It doesn't matter where President Trump is. Whether President Trump is in China or on the moon or in Bangladesh having curry, the US military would annihilate the Islamic Republic if they do a preemptive strike. Because President Trump has these things now. It's been invented recently. It's called phones, mobile phones or cell phones if you're in the US. they could tell him wherever he is, he can still get the updates. He doesn't have to wait for a fax machine. Everything is quick these days. Immortal Guard will need US-Israel backup. Agree? They already have them. Yeah, at least the Israelis. Could the US send in our own oil tankers to Iran to take the oil? Well, they'll be shot at, but yeah. They've got missiles and drones. Iran still won't get paid for it, but they won't have to dump it, and we can use it for our oil reserves and the normal use. We've heard that the Americans don't really need the oil from Iran, but the IRGs will just shoot at anyone, and that just resumes the war. Inside or outside Iran is great, as it means wherever they are hiding, UK, Canada, they should be extradited and have nowhere to hide. Yes, absolutely. The new IRGC plans to raise revenue, charging Starlink space tolls. Satellites. Imagine. You think we can get Trump to blockade the channel? It would guarantee the end to the small. Actually, that's a good idea. Get the US Navy to do a blockade of the English channel. Will Trump stay until midterm if necessary? It depends. It depends on what the opinion polls are saying at that point. But we still have a few months left. So if the war, the strikes resume, even if they resume end of June, let's just say, or beginning of July, they won't have to take that long. It will just be a few more weeks or a couple of more months before the Americans withdraw. For tomorrow, include this. Churchill's speech about tyranny mentions tyranny within or without. We will march together against it. The problem is I can't really plagiarize because it'll be too obvious. That was a joke about Tucker. He talks.
All right. Always at the end, he talks about the super chats and the mention. It's a great channel too. See over there, he does 2 hours a day, usually 1 hour around lunchtime, Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour between 4 and 7 o'clock. He pops out. Really great coverage, quick, concise, to the point. Really appreciate his work. You guys should go out there and check him out if you ever, whoever's in here watching me now. It's my first stream. Just trying to figure it out, get through the ropes. I'm literally starting from nothing, not affiliated with any other channels right now as it is. I mean, I watch a lot of other channels. I appreciate other channels. But right now, it's just about the growth of my channel and my community and, well, the future our community. But for now, it's just me. And I wanted to touch on one more thing tonight. Tomorrow, I will probably be doing the Unite the Right rally and seeing what's going on in Cuba, because I do have a feeling like Raul might get snatched up tonight within the next few hours. If Ratcliffe went over there, it's kind of like a symbol of, okay, we get it, we're done. How are we going to save face here? What do we have to do? But the last one I want to touch on tonight is El Presidente, El Jefe, the boss, the man, the living legend himself, talking to, honestly, like one of the worst journalists out there, dude. I can't stand Brett Barry, such a tool. But Fox News always gets the exclusive because they're only mainstream Republican party that's basically on every platform, cable television, regular television. So it's not like he could do this with ABC, because we always see how it turns out with ABC, CNN, MSNBC. The reporters are biased. They're constantly interrupting him in the answers. So let's see how this one went.
Mr. President, thanks for the time. Thank you. You know, you said that this summit is a success. As you get ready to head back to Washington, what's the most significant, specific thing you walk away from here for the U.S.?
I think the most important thing is relationship. It's all about relationship. I have a very good relationship with President Xi and with China. And it sounds like something that doesn't mean anything, but it's everything. In deal making and problems we've solved, the two of us have solved a lot of problems that somebody else would have maybe done very badly with. We've solved a lot of problems over the years. We have a very good relationship. Trade has been very strong. We're getting a lot of soybeans for our farmers. We're doing a lot of, there's a lot of things happening for the farmers. He committed to 200 Boeings, big ones, 777s and 737s, and a lot of big ones, big, beautiful Boeing planes, 200, that's a lot, with a commitment that if they do a good job, and I told this to Boeing and General Electric, we're going to go to the General Electric engines, which are great. If they do a good job, we could go up to 750.
And that's obviously a lot of investment going back and forth. You know, some Democrats, even some Republicans, had some concerns about Chinese manufacturing on U.S. soil. Is that happening?
Well, if they don't want to pay tariffs, it could happen, just like it's happening with other countries and companies. We have now more money being invested in the United States than any country at any time in the history of the world, including China, which probably is second from about 10 years ago. We have $18 trillion in 11 months, not the 12th month hasn't come in yet, the numbers. We have $18 trillion. If China wants to come in and wants to avoid tariffs, if they build here, for the most part, they're going to be hiring American people. If they want to avoid tariffs, they're going to build in the United States.
Despite concerns about China operating inside the U.S.
We have Japan is building massive Toyota, Honda, all of them. I mean, they're building massive plants all over the country. So if China wants to build for their cars, now, I will tell you, I put 100% tariff on Chinese cars because I didn't want them coming into the country. If you take a look, only because they swamp you, they'll destroy your auto industry, and that's what's happening in Europe. And now they're saying we have to do a little bit like Donald Trump. Europe is being killed. They're being absolutely swamped by hundreds of thousands, millions of Chinese cars, and Mercedes and BMW and Volkswagen. They're getting killed. So if you notice, we haven't had that problem. You know why? Because I have 100% tariff on cars made in China.
And even though the Supreme Court ruling, you're going to still continue that tariff.
The ruling was just on a specific type of tariff.
And you're going a different route.
Correct. I have the right to do the same tariff in, frankly, a little bit more complex way, but it's actually a better tariff. It's a more stringent tariff.
I want to ask you about Iran and AI, but China made clear that Taiwan is very important to them. And after your first meeting here, President Xi's spokesman put out a statement to the media, through the media, saying this: the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. You were still inside the meeting when that came out. That sounded almost...
But we all know how those clashes would end. That's the most important part.
It's like a threat. Was it communicated that way behind closed doors?
No, it wasn't. Not at all. But it has always been the most important issue. And it's not a takeover. They just don't want to see this place, we'll call it a place because nobody knows how to define it, but they don't want to see it go independent. They don't want to do it. And I think they probably would do something pretty harsh, and then they would be met harshly and bad things will happen. So no, it's not that. We talked, by the way, last night, we talked the whole night about that issue. I think I know more about Taiwan right now than I know about almost any country.
You think it dominated the talk?
It's always been his most important thing from the day I knew him years ago. I've known him now 11 years, 12 years. It's always been the biggest thing for him, Taiwan. Now, with me, I don't think they'll do anything when I'm here. When I'm not here, I think they might, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure that they do anything if it remained as is. But they have somebody there now that wants to go independent. Well, it's a risky thing. When you go independent, they're going independent because they want to get into a war and they figure they have the United States behind them. I'd like to see it stay the way it is. And I'll tell you something, I'll make a little news. I'd like to see everybody making chips over in Taiwan come into America because, to be honest with you, I think it's the greatest thing you can do because it's a heated situation. There's no question about it. And as you know, we have massive amounts of chip companies now from Taiwan already coming in. We expect to have 40 to 50% of the world chip business by the end of my term. And I think it should be even more than that. I think all of those chip companies, if they're smart, they're going to start heading to Arizona and the places where they're building. It's going to solve your problem.
Should the people of Taiwan feel more or less secure after your meetings with President Xi?
Neutral.
Yeah, the same.
Has the policy changed at all?
Why would they feel any different? The Chinese said the same thing that they've been saying for generations. Trump didn't tell them anything. Trump's like, yeah, no, I understand. Anyway.
No, nothing's changed. Policy. No, nothing's changed. I will say this. I'm not looking to have somebody go independent and, we're supposed to travel 9,500 miles to fight a war. I'm not looking for that. I want them to cool down. I want China to cool down.
But you're waiting on approving billions of dollars of weapons for Taiwan.
That's right.
Is that moving forward?
Well, I haven't approved it yet. We're going to see what happens.
What are you looking for?
I may do it. I may not do it.
Yeah. What's your hinge?
Well, I'm not going to say that, but I may do it. I may not do it. But we're not looking to have wars. And if you kept it the way it is, I think China's going to be okay with that. But we're not looking to have somebody say, let's go independent because the United States is backing us.
So President Xi probably liked that you haven't approved the weapons to Taiwan.
I would say like is maybe too strong a word because he thinks I could do it with just the signing of my signature, unlike Biden, who couldn't sign his signature. No, I'm holding that in abeyance, and it depends on China. It depends. It's a very good negotiating chip for us, frankly. It's a lot of weapons. It's $12 billion. It's a lot of weapons. But, when you look at the odds, China's a very, very powerful, big country. That's a very small island. It's, you think of it, it's 59 miles away, 59 miles. We're 9,500 miles away. That's a little bit of a difficult problem. With all of that being said, if you look at the history of Taiwan, Taiwan was developed because we had presidents that didn't know what the hell they were doing. Because if they would have put tariffs on chips coming in, they would have never left. Everything was about Intel, and everything was about our chip companies. They stole our chip industry. So I've said that for years. I said, for years they stole our chip. If we would have had one of our presidents just say, we're going to put 100% chip. You can leave, you can build in Taiwan, but you sell it back into the United States. We're going to put 100% or 200% tariff. We would have never lost the chip. We lost the chip industry. It's all coming back. And I do say this, Taiwan would be very smart to cool it a little bit. China would be very smart to cool it a little bit. They ought to both cool it.
On AI, was there any agreement about any kind of guardrails that China and the U.S. might agree to so that AI doesn't go crazy?
Well, we talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it. Look, AI is mostly a great thing, mostly. And we're leading China. We talked about that. We're leading China by a lot. I gave the right for AI to build their own electric producing plants. That's a big deal. They can manufacture their own electricity now, which we could never have gotten from the grid. And now you have these very rich companies headed by lots of geniuses building electric plants. Because of that, we are leading China by a lot in the AI race. Now, it's mostly the two of us. Other nations are in it, but mostly. And whoever wins the AI race, and we're going to win it. I mean, if we're smart, we're going to win it. If we're not smart, we're not. But we're leading by a lot. We talked about that last night. President Xi was very surprised at how well we've done with AI because they thought, when it started, they took this gigantic lead. And we now have caught, we are substantially ahead of them in AI.
But do you think there'll be some buy-in, set up guardrails or something?
I think there could be. We talked about it. But, at the same time, we're competing. So it's a little hard to say, oh, gee, we're competing with each other and we're going to put guardrails. It really doesn't work that way too much. But AI, if you look at medicine, some of the things are coming up with medicine, some of the cures they're coming up with that people would have never gotten there. It's going to be mostly a good thing. But
they've been around. The whole AI with the medicine and all that, that's been around for over a decade now.
We want to have some guardrails.
You said that the President
There's no money in the cure. We all know that.
Xi said he would offer assistance on Iran. And specifically,
I also said we don't need assistance.
You didn't ask for it. You said he was offering it specifically to open the Strait of Hormuz. What do you think he will do?
I think he's been very nice about it. He gets 40% of his oil there. He didn't send anybody. He didn't send ships. He didn't send ships with big fat guns on them that we would have had to repel. We would have. The good thing is I built during my first 4 years the most powerful military in the world. We have the most powerful military in the world. That was shown in Venezuela, which took 1 day. Actually took 48 hours. I mean, took, let's see, about 48 minutes. I think it was 48 minutes and 13 seconds, and it was over. And it's a strong country with a strong military, but it went very quickly. And now, by the way, we have made a fortune with their oil. And so they've made more money in the last 8 months than they've made in the last 10 years. And we're really participating in the profit.
Venezuela, but obviously Iran is
it's a different kind of a thing. But we're doing probably almost as well as, I don't know how you can do better. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. It's all destroyed. Their Air Force is destroyed.
Yeah, they're talking a big game. They're talking a big game. Iran's foreign minister said the Strait is open to commercial shipping only if they cooperate with the Iranians.
They're not talking a big game. You know who's talking a big game? The fake news media. If you read the New York Times, you would think that we're losing militarily. Think of it. They have 159 ships. Every one is now in the bottom of the sea. Every one of them is gone. They had mine droppers. They call them mine droppers. Nice thing. Who has 22 mine droppers? The mine droppers are all gone. Now they have what they call fast boats. You know what they are? Runabouts, like you'd buy for your fantastic son if you wanted to buy him a nice boat, and they put a machine gun on it, okay? Most of them are knocked out. We knock them out just like we knock out the drug dealers.
You like to talk about cards. It seems like they're playing with a bad deck, to your point.
They have no deck.
But they're still playing.
No, the only thing they have going is a fake press. They know how well we're doing militarily. And then
it's more like, it's not cards, it's more like front hand, back hand from that Key and Peele sketch where they just keep like front hand, smack, back hand, smack.
At the request of a very nice group of people from Pakistan who are very close to Iran, I didn't go that final. They said, could you stop? We're going to make a deal. And we really had the confines of a deal. No nuclear. They were going to give us the dust, nuclear dust, everything we wanted. And every time they make a deal, the next day it's like, we didn't have that conversation. And that's taken place about 5 times. There's something wrong with them. Actually, they're crazy. And you know what? Because of that, they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Because
the president of China agrees with you on that.
He agrees with me on that. He agrees with me that he wants to see it end. He'd like to see it end. He would like to help. If he wants help, that's great. But we don't need help. And you know the problem with help? When somebody helps you, they always want something on the other side. That's the way help works.
It's hard to believe, but it was 1 year ago today in UAE, interviewed you, and I asked you about Iran.
By the way, does anybody else get these? This is like half of the advertisement I get for these stupid ass games. And then the other half is like AI generated sex pills with AI generated commercials. Anybody else get those? Is this all that's left on YouTube now? Jesus.
Oh, we'll get 100%.
You think so?
Well, we're going to have a solution one way or the other. It's either going to be violent or not violent. And I far prefer nonviolent.
Sure. Obviously, you've explained.
Perfect answer.
You've explained why you did what you did because of the nuclear threat for Iran.
Yeah.
It's obviously not Venezuela. It's different.
Well, it's different.
But you did say it was going to be fairly quick. And you said it numerous times.
Venezuela was sending drugs in at a level that was terrible. And they did something that was a terrible mortal sin. They emptied their prisons into our country. Okay? That was terrible. And that was different. This one is, I guess you could say, worse. That was pretty bad. You don't get much worse. Emptying your prisons, drug dealers, murderers into our country, that's pretty bad. But you could say this is worse. In this one, they are trying to make a nuclear weapon. I've stopped it twice. They would have had it 2 years ago. They would have used it already on Israel and the rest of the Middle East. Look at all the missiles shot at people that didn't think they were even involved. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. Look at all. I mean, Bahrain, Kuwait. They got all shot at. Nobody thought they were even involved in this thing. They would have used a nuclear weapon on the Middle East. One thing I'll make clear right now. They said very specifically, because I deal with them.
Saudi Arabia,
I said, we're taking the nuclear dust. They said, you can have it. I said, we're going to go get it. We're not going to let you take it. They said, we can't take it. We don't have the capability of taking it. I said, why? I said, because it was hit so hard. I mean, the mountain literally collapsed on it, a granite mountain.
So why isn't that good
Just
enough?
so you know. Well,
I mean, if you want to go set back.
it is good enough.
Let him fucking finish, dude.
But you know what? It's not good enough public relations wise. It's important. It's important. It's probably good enough for a different reason, though. Space Force, which I created, has got cameras, 9 different cameras in space on that site. We know everybody that moves there. We can read the name.
Space Force. I remember when some dude was arguing on another panel, he was just like, they took out our defense systems in all these different places. US is basically done. I'm like, dude, do you even know what Space Force is capable of already?
Of a person, we can need if his name is Mohammed something, and most of them are Mohammed, you can guess about 50% right. We can read his name right on his tag from space. It's the most amazing thing. Yeah. Anybody that goes near that space, we have it tagged. They haven't done anything there, and if they did, we would hit them very hard. So 2 days ago, and speaking to the Iranians, they told me it was hit so hard. They actually said, I must say, that there's only 2 countries that could get it, us and China. Right. They said us and China, that they don't have the capability of getting it because it was so obliterated. The term I used was obliterated. The fake news said, oh, maybe somebody can get it. They actually said if they wanted to get it, they couldn't. So that's not good.
China can't get that shit. I wouldn't trust China with that. Have y'all heard about the hydro plant that China built in, I think it was Kenya, and then there's another one in Nigeria, to where the concrete is literally deteriorating, and the power plant is like not even 10 years old, is collapsing. It's dilapidating. Yet the Kenyans and the Nigerians still owe them money for that. And they gave Nigeria like a railway, which is better than nothing. I mean, let's be honest. The IMF is the reason why we're hated all around the world, is because it's the worst. The International Monetary, they basically enslave countries. China does the same thing, but they gave them, a train that resembles a train that you would get on, to ride across the Wild West in the 1800s, in the mid 19th century. But they gave them something. It cost them their ports, but they gave them something. IMF don't give the people shit. And this is why I think America needs to start doing what the Chinese do, as far as when we loan directly or we do business directly with these countries. We shouldn't go through an international monetary fund, because the International Monetary Fund is basically a screw job for anybody that they say that they're going to help.
Enough for me. I want to get it. So why are we where we are? Did you underestimate the pain tolerance that Iran has?
I didn't underestimate anything. We hit them unbelievably hard. Look, we left their bridges. We left their electricity capacity. We can knock that all out in 2 days.
Day.
2 days, everything.
Yeah.
We left Kharg Island, other than, I said, hit it, except for the valves where the oil comes in.
I'll be honest with you. When they started bringing troops in, they were mostly parachute troops, airborne, Army airborne. And I thought we were literally going to drop in and take over the island on an air invasion, and just neuter them there and just start taking the oil from them. But we didn't do that. And so, like, I don't think we should put troops in on the ground, because I think if we do put troops on the ground, it will demoralize us to not want to be involved in this, because we don't need to. It's basically that. Like, we don't need to. And the fact that our allies who depend on this oil coming out of this part of the world aren't willing to help us, like, just resolve the situation. It'd be a lot easier if we had twice the minesweepers, but we don't, and they're not helping us. So I think, if anything, any country that is reliant on this part of the world for their oil in this strait, the Persian Gulf into the Strait of Hormuz, they need to pay for the cleanup afterwards, because it's their fault that it's happened. They did not step in to help, and they should have stepped in to help. Like, people don't realize the French and the British and the Germans benefited from the oil out of Iraq, and the minerals out of Afghanistan are basically handled by the Chinese and the French, and I think the German companies. Like, it didn't benefit us, besides the fact, it was supposed to benefit our dollar, and it doesn't really benefit our dollar anymore, especially in Afghanistan. The Chinese basically took over our air bases. Like, it was an ultimate stab in the back what Joe Biden did. And then what was it, 3 weeks later, 6 weeks later, all of a sudden, when we pull out of Afghanistan, then all of a sudden the Ukrainian war kicks off. The same Ukraine that Joe Biden's son and family has been implicated in all these corruption scandals, and a lot of other politicians that they don't talk about. Like, people got to start putting 2 and 2 together with these things, man. There's a lot of corruption around here, and even there's corruption now. Like, I'm not trying to say, like, this dude's a saint, but, like, this is the way the game is played. You can't call it out now and ignore it then. And, like, you didn't say anything when our politicians were approving the billions of dollars in ammunitions and weapons that were being used to attack Russia directly. Our politicians went down to, I think it was Iowa or wherever, Virginia, and they were autographing the bombs that were going to attack Russian soldiers. So if you think that us attacking Iran was going to cause a problem with the Chinese and the Russians, you have no room to talk now.
Because when you hit that means you're going to lose a little oil. But one thing is happening amazingly. Ships are floating up to Texas and Louisiana, and they're going to Alaska, and they're loading up with oil like we've never seen before.
Americans want to know when it's over, though, right?
Yeah, look, Vietnam lasted 19 years. Iraq was like 10 years. Korea was 7 years. Another one was 14 years. Another one was 12 years. Another one was 9 years. We're in there for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
The other thing they talk about, so we lost tens of thousands of soldiers in Vietnam. We lost tens of thousands of soldiers in practically every war.
Yep.
I've lost, and I wish we'd lost none because I know those parents. I spoke to them. We lost 13 soldiers in 2 wars.
China got 3 tankers out this week filled with Iranian oil.
Because we allowed that to happen.
Exactly.
We allowed that to happen.
Before this trip. Gas prices in America are still high, painfully high.
They're going to drop like a rock as soon
Once
as
it's over.
Yep. As soon as the war over, it will go down. And the same people that are complaining, trying to make it a big thing that the prices are so high right now, didn't say anything in 2023 when they were over $5, sometimes or touching between $4 a gallon and $5 a gallon. When Trump came into office, the egg prices were at like, I think that the same dozen I bought for $2.49 the other day, or it's an 18 pack for $2.49. When Joe Biden or when Donald Trump first came in, right when Donald Trump came in, they were at like $13 for the same thing, eggs, same 18 pack of eggs. And all the left wanted to do was complain about the prices, but by Easter they had been down to like 6 or 7, and now they're at $2.50. So like people want to complain, but then like when the prices change, they don't even want to talk about it, because they just wanted to use that against him and try to make people feel like, oh, you picked the wrong guy. You should have picked Kamala. What would have Kamala done? Does anybody tell me what was her credibility to even be the president? Did she ever run a company? No. She was the mayor of San Francisco's blowjob, or Oakland. She was his blowjob toy. That's how she moved up in the industry. Go look at how long she was in college for. She's not a bright woman.
And could be creeping higher
lower than
before it's
Biden.
done.
Excuse me, lower than Biden.
And she wasn't elected in the first place. The whole thing was a scam. Joe Biden went until everybody knew there was something wrong with Joe Biden since before he got into the office. And then we're not even talking about the fact that they covered up the entire time that he had stage 4 cancer. And they knew that in his first year in office.
And much lower than people thought they'd be.
This inflation number is going up. You're right. It's much lower than President Biden's was, but it's going up under you. The numbers are. You can imagine Democrats and political pundits jumped all over the statement that you made the other day. You were
damn right the people get it.
Asked when you were leaving.
What extent are American financial situations motivated?
This was my favorite thing the other day. How he scolds this bitch. I love it.
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters is when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
That's right. That's a perfect statement. I'd make it again.
You can imagine how many people stop the soundbite I don't think about America's financial situation. So what's your response to that framework?
It's very simple. When people hear me say it, everybody agrees. Short-term pain. It's going to be short-term pain. But the pain is much less than people thought. Because people thought that the oil would go up to $250. You know, it was $99 yesterday, $99 a barrel. I thought it might go up to $200. I was okay with that. Not that I wanted it, but you cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. They will use it on us. They'll start off with Israel, wipe it out. The Middle East, wipe it out. It'll go to Europe. You know, they have a missile that goes to Europe. You saw that, okay? They have a missile that goes to Europe. I have done Europe a very big favor. When you tell somebody you're going to have to pay a little more, not that much more, a little more for gasoline for a very short period of time.
Couple months.
Because we want to stop the threat of being blown to pieces by a lunatic, by a crazy person, and they are crazy, using nuclear weapons.
Just the fact that they can hold the entire strait hostage at any time they wanted to. And that's what they would do. Anytime that Israel would bomb them or attack them or do anything, they would basically threaten to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So now they can't shut down the Strait of Hormuz. First of all, they don't even have the capabilities to do that anymore.
Everybody says that's fine. And that question was a fake question, and they didn't put my full answer. I totally care. Look, I inherited high prices, and they came in with the word affordability. My first press conference 2 days in, and Biden didn't do press conferences. He'd go for years without doing, because he was incapable of doing it. He was an incompetent person. But my first question was about egg.
It was like $160 days before he did his presser. Like it was a gap between. He didn't do it for months. And then when he did, it was such a staged press conference. Like, I couldn't believe that people would defend. And then when I would talk to people who hated Donald Trump, they would just tell me straight to my face, it's like, I don't really care as long as it's not Donald Trump. They didn't care what was going on. They're just pre-programmed to hate this man.
Eggs have quadrupled. What are you going to do? I said, eggs, tell me about eggs. Tell me about the problem. Eggs have gone up 4 times. They said, I'll take care of it. By the way, I did take care of it. But
Yeah, he did.
Whoa.
Yeah, he did.
I just built a budget.
I just talked about that. He damn sure did. And they don't give him credit for that. Then when you say that, oh, you don't give him credit for fixing egg prices, like, oh, well, that was bound to happen anyway. Then they'll go to like the Biden administration. Oh, the Biden administration implemented this and this and that. It doesn't matter what the Biden administration implemented. You can implement everything you want until your face turns blue. If you can't get the prices down, I don't care what you're implementing.
rotten with policy. They're horrible politicians. In many cases, we have a new name. They're Democrats. I call them Democrats, not Democrats. They're Democrats. A lot of low IQ people. You have Ilhan Omar saying World War XI. She said she was referring to World War II. She said World War XI. These people are destroying our country, and we have to stop it. You know, President Xi said something yesterday. He talked about, and he wasn't referring to the last 15 months. He talked about America's a nation in decline. And I said, you're right. But he wasn't talking about, because he said what you've done in 14, 15 months is a miracle.
When you hear Trump voters, Alex says, I voted for you 3 times. He can't handle the costs, and he's not for this foreign conflict.
I hate it.
He's not for the foreign conflict. But Roy in Pennsylvania, he's a retired farmer. He can't handle the fuel going up, and he says he's
going to come down very fast.
And
Look, disappointed.
I'm just telling you what
you say to him.
They'll hate him today for the oil prices, but they're going to love him in a few months for the drop in price. And so when I hear things like that, I get it. You know, it's tough right now, especially because we just came out of a presidency who basically didn't give a damn about the farmers or anybody in the middle class in this country. He essentially just gave a damn about flooding the country with third world cheap labor. And nobody seems to understand the fact that this reason why everybody is broke is because everybody's wages have been reverting backwards. When Donald Trump left the presidency before the flu came out, wages were going up. Wages were going up. As a matter of fact, there are these 2 Russian guys. They do prank calls to powerful leaders. They do an imitation of what's the guy's name? Zelensky. And they prank called Chairman Powell, who was the head of the Federal Reserve. And he thought he was talking to Zelensky, telling him that basically, oh, well, the reason why inflation is so high is because wages are too high. So he admitted that you have to drive down wages in order to lower inflation, which is a crazy view to look at that, to say, oh, people are making too much money. That's why inflation is too high. We have to make people poorer in order to make inflation lower. Like, it's crazy to me that this is the way our quantitative easing is working. Like, you have to starve out the people. So what were they doing? They were bringing in third world laborers to essentially take over every industry they could. And then what ends up happening? Wages go down, unemployment goes up, the people on welfare, there's more people on welfare, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, you're looking at a country that's in destitute. People were completely demoralized under Joe Biden because they felt like this dude was bringing in the new population, and he didn't really care about. Has anybody ever asked this question? Why is it that the West has a declining birth rate when the poorer countries around the world, poorer parts of Africa, they're the only parts that are growing? Because they don't have to pay for every time they have a child. They're basically incentivized to just keep having kids, and we'll give you more money on food stamps when you do. But when you're in the middle class, you have to pay to have a child. Like, we're completely backwards, dude. Why are we not giving people tax breaks to have children in the first place? And I think Donald Trump did initiate that. So I'm all for the way that he's doing this. I honestly am. I'm really behind him. I've been behind him. I don't agree with him on everything. I don't like plenty of things that's going on. I don't like the fact that the data centers are allowed to build their own energy plants. They should be regulated by the government. And if they want to do this, we should take into consideration the fact that all these server farms have been eating up the electricity in the first place. So they need to build twice the size that they need right now. and then sell us, give us back our energy that we've been given to them, that everybody's been paid more for. And I don't like the real ID thing. I never liked the real ID thing. And he's a big proponent of that, and I don't like that. I can admit these things. These people act like everything he's doing is by the hand of the devil. And then when it turns out good, they just can't admit to it. They go on to the next topic of the day. Oh, he's a tyrant. He's this, he's that. He shut the border down on his first day. In 3 days, it was over. Like, I remember that when they gave the press conference to Joe Biden, and they asked Joe Biden, and he was walking away without taking questions. Somebody yelled to him, "Sir, you could shut the border down right now. Why won't you do it?" And he turned around, he stopped, turned around, and gave this shit-eating grin and was like, "My hands are tied. Sorry, can't do nothing about it." Look at this president.
Roy, Alex, we got a problem. We just hit the highest stock market price ever. By the way, then when I went in, now again, it's higher. With the war, it's higher than it was when I went in. Think of that. The 401ks at their all-time high. Yep. There are more people working right now in the United States of America than at any point ever in the history of our country.
Detroit Free Press, a state that you won.
401ks, another argument, because 401ks, I don't like the fact that 401ks are linked to all these companies that are basically trying to neuter the American middle class in the first place. They're all tied to BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Maybe Vanguard's not so bad because of where they came from originally, but I don't know where they're at now, right? But you have them, they're invested into these companies like Toll Brothers, who build houses, but Toll Brothers announced years ago that they're no longer building single family houses. They're building rental units, multifamily rental units, and they're building small mini mansions. There's no more for the middle class that they were building, yet everybody's 401k is tied to this company that's basically telling you, listen, we're not building your houses anymore. We're building houses you can't afford or houses you'll never be able to own. They're just rental properties.
While champagne flowed on the trading floor and President Donald Trump celebrated record highs, pessimism spread like wildfire outside Wall Street's doors, straight into the kitchens of average American families. There is this sense that something is changing. Whether they can hold on and believe that you're going to get them to
Brett, I have to do what's right. I said to my people, we just hit 50,000 on the Dow. That wasn't supposed to happen for 5 or 6 years. I did it in my first year. We just hit 7,000 on the S&P. That was even less of a chance than the Dow. We just announced 401ks are at the all-time highest that they've ever been. All these things happened, and I said, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we have to stop this group of very crazy people. Now, those people are gone. They've been eliminated. The second group has been eliminated, and some of the third group. In a way, we've eliminated so many leaders that it's almost, I'm trying to figure out who the hell are we dealing with. All right?
Who are you dealing with?
But, well, we're dealing with people that I think are right, but they're afraid to make a deal. They don't know how to make a deal. They've never been put in this position before.
So you're going to hold out until they do?
Well, I'm going to do what's right. I have to do what's right.
But the strait should be open, right?
It should be open. Look, see, to stop the strait is very easy. All they have to do is say, we dropped a mine in the strait someplace. So you're at a little disadvantage, but that's okay. The strait will be open. They will not have a nuclear weapon, and the world will go on. And you will see gasoline prices drop. Energy prices generally drop like no. But don't forget, they have a lot of boats that are loaded up with oil that are going to bring the oil out as soon as this is over. And I think it's going to end fast. They've been holding up the world for many, many years with the strait. They've used this many, many times. They said, we'll close the strait. They've closed it in the past. They use it
I think
as
it
a
was
weapon.
6 or 7 times. The last time they threatened to close, I think it was in 2019 or 2021, something like that. Then they threatened to close it during the Iran-Iraq war, 2007. They've threatened to close it multiple times, and they've drove gas prices through the roof. Listen, the only reason why gas prices are high now is speculation prices. Is the speculators get rich when things like this happen, and they know that after this is resolved, they can't inflate these prices anymore. They're not going to be able to keep running up the prices, and so now they're just trying to make as much money as they can off the crisis, and that's why they're running up the prices.
Using it as a weapon with me. And what they did, and actually what President Xi said last night, sort of smiling about it, he said, well, they close the strait and then you close them.
But you think they're going to capitulate sometime soon?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I have no doubt.
Mr. President, stand by if you would. Special report from Beijing with the President of the United States continues after this.
Be sure to like and...
Hold on a second. Hello? All right. That's my stream for tonight. I'll be here tomorrow. I'll be covering the British rally tomorrow, probably to see what's going on with the Cuba. Maybe rally might be snatched up. You might get snatched up tonight. We'll see. But yeah, till next time. You know, this is a new thing, and I'm just getting started here. And I appreciate everybody who will maybe watch it, maybe not, whatever. But we'll grow from here. Everybody have a good night. God bless.
Control over your mind is what the fight is for. Persuasive propaganda conforms thoughts to align, but that's with anything. What makes this different from the norm? They're changing everything. Sex, race, age, and species. Many think it's too late to stop now. It's how it needs to be. Like you don't need these guns and free speech. They lost trillions of dollars, wanna see all your receipts. Your privacy's in danger. Swarms of hive minds forming echo chambers. Pre-practice views skewed through repeated talking points leads me to conclude that they don't practice what they preach. You'll see, none of it's what it seems to be. Welcome to the high wars. The truth, what we strive towards. It's worth it to fight for. What the power fears most is when more minds don't conform to their lies. Don't let them lead you blind. Sight is what the eyes are for. Focus on discernment, then hindsight is my advice. In these eye wars with John strives. You're disillusioned, there's no choice, you're not choosing. It's the illusion of choice that's causing the confusion. Good cop or bad cop, there is no refusion. We the people, the ones that fight the evil. Both foreign and domestic, no reclusion. They're already here, there is no recusing of the truth when it's colorblind. More about a state of mind. Cause sometimes people get corrupted, become disgusted to what they once trusted, led lost by others who tried to find what you couldn't and then lied. Said they figured it out just to sell a product line. They've been around forever but can never solve the crime. They're lying and now's the time to let the light shine. In case you couldn't see the signs. Welcome to the eye wars. The truth, what we strive towards. It's worth it to fight for. What the power fears most is when more minds don't conform to their lies. Don't let them lead you blind. Sight is what the eyes are for. Focus on discernment, then hindsight is my advice. In these eye wars with John strive. Wars. John Strives did this.